Yi Han stared at the wall of text in front of him, and the confirm button waiting at the bottom, his heart pounding. Everyone had been transmigrated to survive in the mist. The world reset to zero. No laws or morals out here. Resources scarcer than gold. And in a single week, the mist storm would come crashing down with only a shelter able to keep anyone alive through it. He pinched his own thigh hard, just to be sure he wasn't dreaming, muttered his old gaming mantra about always staying one step ahead, and hit confirm without hesitation, since he'd read enough web novels to know better than to hesitate. The text vanished, replaced by a translucent blue interface humming with technological polish. His survival panel, naming him Survivor Yi Han. Shelter level 1 star. Missed coins at 0. Talent listed as none. And a single resource waiting. The Novice Welfare Pack. He opened it at once. A flash of white light later, the panel informed him he'd obtained 1 L of pure water, 500 G of black bread, and 10 mist coins, and that the mist shop had now unlocked. Stepping into it, he found an interface explaining that the shop refreshed every 24 hours with 3 new items, and that survivors could sell collected resources back to it for mist coins. The 3 items on offer were 2 meat buns for 5 mist coins, a sharp dagger for 10, and, catching his eye immediately, an awakened talent for 30, marked as a permanent, one-of-a-kind item guaranteed to appear at least once within any 10 refreshes, with a warning that missing it meant losing it forever. Yi Han's excitement flared. Awakening a powerful talent early would set the whole game on easy mode, he thought, but he only had 10 coins and needed 20 more. He remembered the shop's note about selling collected resources, tried offloading the water and bread from his welfare pack, and was refused. Of course, welfare items weren't the collected kind the shop meant. He'd have to go out and gather resources on the Mist Continent himself. He closed the panel and took stock of where he actually was. A cramped thatched cottage barely 10 square meters across, wine leaking in from every seam, the air thick with a musty staleness that turned his stomach. Through the gaps in the walls, he could see a pale gray mist smothering the world outside, ominous but mercifully unable to seep into the cottage. Proof that the shelter really was the one safe place. But resources meant stepping outside, and he had no other option. Thinking about the mist's toxins, a plan struck him, and he started stripping down, only then noticing what he'd been dressed in. An outdoor jacket and hiking boots that looked sturdy and well-made, evidently standard issue for every transmigrator, along with a gray, long-sleeved shirt, pants, underwear, and socks underneath. He decided the jacket was the better piece for protection and kept it on, setting the gray, long-sleeved shirt aside to use against the poison instead. Stripping off his upper layers, putting the jacket back on, he then willed a large bottle of pure water into existence in front of him. Still baffled at whatever power could transmigrate all 8 billion people on Earth into this place, next to which simply pulling items out of a resource tab barely registered as strange. He soaked the gray shirt with the water, since wetting cloth to cover the nose and mouth was common sense for cutting down on toxic inhalation, and by the time he'd finished, he'd used up about a third of his water supply. He stored the rest back in his tab, tied the damp shirt over his face, steadied his nerve, and stepped outside. The moment he crossed the threshold felt like entering another world entirely. Lifeless, thick with a menace that crawled over his skin. The gray mist swallowed sky and ground alike, visibility dropping to barely 2 meters, and somewhere deep within it he could hear faint howls rising and falling, drawing steadily closer, enough to raise the hair on his neck. The temperature itself was tolerable, somewhere above 10 degrees, not yet the extreme weather the warnings had promised, though he knew better than to relax. His eyes stung faintly, and every breath left a bitter taste in his mouth. Not daring to linger, he scanned his surroundings quickly and found only ruined, desolate wilderness with no trace of human presence. Moving forward cautiously, he got lucky almost immediately. Just a few steps in, he spotted a small hillside slope covered in a patch of plants. Even in a place this hostile, he thought, life always found some way to adapt and survive. Pulling one up by force, he found its root system unexpectedly large, resembling something between a potato and a sweet potato, possibly edible. On the spot, he tried selling it to the mist shop and got back its description. A bitter seed potato, a 1-star resource. A low-grade edible and plantable crop whose seeds were bitter-tasting and mildly toxic but useful in medicine. And, crucially, non-recyclable, meaning it could only be kept for eating, planting, or trading with other survivors. Disappointed, He abandoned the rest of the patch without bothering to pull more. Since his priority now was resources the shop would actually pay mist coins for. That was when he noticed something else in the disturbed soil where he'd pulled the potato. 2 fist-sized cyan stones, faintly glowing. Their description appeared at once. Celestite, a 2-star resource, a precious stone material usable for shelter upgrades and crafting weapons, with a recycling price of 10 mist coins per kilogram. Yi Han's eyes lit up at the sight. The 2 pieces of azure stone sat heavy in his hands. He guessed roughly 5 kilograms between them, which made sense given how dense this kind of stone clearly was. Yi Han didn't waste a second deciding to sell both to the mist shop. A notification flashed up, congratulating him on obtaining 52 mist coins, the stones vanishing from his hands as his coin count on the survival panel jumped from 10 to 62. Thrilled, he immediately went for the talent awakening he'd been eyeing. The panel congratulated him on being the very first survivor to awaken a talent, granting him a unique hidden talent called Enlightenment. An SSS-grade talent exclusive to pioneers, capable of enlightening resources to upgrade and transform them. Upgradable itself as it leveled, with its daily limit currently sitting at once per use at level 1, the usage resetting each day without any stacking or carryover, and triggered simply by selecting an item that glowed white with a prompt attached. Yi Han was ecstatic. First among all 8 billion survivors to awaken anything, well ahead of everyone else, probably while plenty of others were still crying, scrambling for an escape, or nervously rereading the precautions instead of daring to step outside their cottages. He credited some of it to luck, since stumbling onto those 2 azure stones was what had given him the coins to make it happen. From the moment he'd first appeared in the cottage to becoming the first to claim a talent, barely 3 minutes had passed. A mix of decisive action and good fortune. The mist was getting more unbearable by the second, so he grabbed the bitter seed potato in his hand and hurried back inside the cottage, pulling off the wet cloth from his face with relief once he was safely back in. He turned to testing his new enlightenment talent. Focusing on the bitter seed potatoes on the ground, he watched them glow white with a prompt offering to upgrade them into honey potatoes. 1 kilogram per use. But he shook his head and declined, unwilling to burn his 1 daily use on something that would only improve the taste. He checked the purified water and black bread next. Both could be enlightened too, into an energy drink and white bread respectively, neither of which struck him as worthwhile. Curious, he wondered whether the thatched cottage itself could be enlightened, but staring at it produced nothing. Stepping outside and holding his breath to look at it from a distance, he got a different answer this time. Not a glow, but a line of text explaining that the shelter couldn't be enlightened at all, only upgraded through specific resources and mist coins. Even a unique hidden talent, it seemed, came with limits. There was no cheating a wish-granting lamp into granting infinite wishes. He hurried back inside before he had to breathe the mist air again. With nothing else on hand worth enlightening, he remembered the mist shop and opened it to find 2 items still available: meat buns and the sharp dagger. He spent 10 mist coins on the dagger, and holding it up he found the blade so sharp it could slice through a strand of hair just from being blown against it. He tried enlightenment on it, and the prompt offered to upgrade the sharp dagger into a sharp machete. He took the chance immediately, using his 1 attempt for the day. In a flash of white light, the dagger grew and reshaped itself into a sleek machete, and swinging it through the air twice, produced a satisfying whoosh, the weapon feeling excellent in his hand. With his stomach growling, he cleared out the rest of the shop, spending 5 mist coins on the last 2 meat buns, which appeared steaming and fresh in his hands, each larger than his palm and smelling savory enough to make his mouth water. Biting into one, the thin wrapper gave way to a generous, juicy filling that left him deeply satisfied. He finished both buns, drank some water, and felt his hunger disappear entirely. He took stock. Half his water left, black bread and bitter seed potatoes for food even if they didn't taste great, and 17 mist coins remaining, wishing aloud that the shop still had something like a gas mask, since the toxins in the mist were clearly going to limit how much exploring he could safely do. Already his brief time outside had left his eyes sore and his throat aching. Just then, new text appeared. A 10-second countdown warning that anyone who failed to confirm in time would be erased, counting down from 10. Yi Han understood at once. There were still people out there who hadn't confirmed the precautions, hadn't even opened their panels yet, and time was running out for them. Failing to confirm meant death. With 8 billion people in the world, decisive pioneers like him were bound to be outnumbered by the hesitant. When the countdown ended, the text updated to congratulate the 7,854,000,000 826,485 survivors who had confirmed their entry into the Mist survival, announcing that both the World Chat Channel and Regional Chat Channel were now open and wishing everyone a pleasant survival. Yi Han did the math and realized with a start that just over 8 billion had made it, meaning more than 100 million people had failed to confirm and been erased. He reflected that, as an orphan with no family or friends to worry about, at least he didn't have that particular fear weighing on him. He opened the World Chat Channel and found the screen scrolling too fast to read, practically dazzling him with the sheer volume of people talking at once. He mentally shouted for it to stop, and it did, letting him finally read. Mostly complaints, cursing, and pleas for help. The regional chat was much the same, and he noticed his own region was labeled Withered Mountain Z1. Scrolling back through the world chat for anything useful, he spotted people naming their own regions. Experimental Base Ruins 39, Ruined Desolate City X12, Collapsed Airport Key 42, among others, and gathered that this mist continent was likely far larger than anyone could imagine. He figured city ruins probably held more resources in theory, though mountain regions weren't without their own surprises either. He saw someone bragging about finding a worn-out, phone-like object in a city ruin and selling it for 50 mist coins. But he brushed off any envy, reminding himself he was the very first person to awaken a talent. Right then, a line of highlighted golden text appeared at the top of the World Chat Channel, drawing everyone's attention. A world announcement declaring that Survivor Yi Han, Survivor No, Unknown, was the first to awaken a talent and would receive a golden treasure chest as his reward. The moment that world announcement appeared, shock rippled through everyone reading it. Yi Han saw it too, along with the golden treasure chest reward that came with it, and understood immediately why the announcement had been delayed. His talent awakening had happened so fast that the World Chat Channel hadn't even opened yet, so the system could only reissue the announcement afterward. That didn't stop the backlash. The World Chat exploded with disbelief that anyone could have awakened faster than people who swore they'd done it before the channel even existed. With plenty of confused voices asking what a talent even was, how to get one, and whether this whole thing was some kind of game they could pay real money into. Others complained that the awakened talent item sitting in their own shops for 30 mist coins was unaffordable, wondering aloud where everyone else was even getting coins from. One person announced they'd awakened vision enhancement, letting them see clearly through 3 meters of mist, and seemed rather pleased with themselves about it. Someone else was furious that the golden treasure chest had gone to this Yi Han instead of them, openly threatening to hunt him down and take it by force. Mixed into all of it were desperate cries for help. Someone being stalked by a huge, terrifying dog right outside their cottage. Someone else begging for any way to reach their mother, giving her their name in case she was somehow watching. With well over 7 billion people in the channel, even a fraction of them chatting meant an unreadable flood. Tens of millions of new lines appearing every second, far too much for anyone to actually read through. All Yi Han could do was skim and pick out anything useful. He noted to himself that plenty of others had also moved quickly, but he'd still come out slightly ahead, landing both the unique hidden talent and the golden treasure chest. While others who hadn't rolled the talent item into their own shops were simply out of luck, doomed to fall behind unless they'd managed to roll and afford it on day one. He also registered, without much surprise, that the threats against him confirmed exactly what the precautions had warned. No morals, no laws, and meeting another survivor out here could easily mean a fight to the death. Turning it all over with a mix of feelings, he closed the chat channel. In his survival panel's supplies column, the golden treasure chest was already waiting. Its description explained that it was a precious treasure chest with a chance of yielding various supplies or even special cards, and noted that treasure chests of different levels existed all across the Mist Continent's map, obtainable through exploration, killing exotic beasts, completing achievements, and other means. That matched roughly what he'd already guessed. He opened it at once. A flash of golden light later, the panel congratulated him on obtaining 3 detoxification pills, 1 Mist Shop refresh card, and a partial map of his current region. Contents impressive enough to leave him gasping, his body trembling slightly from excitement. The detoxification pill, per its description, granted 1 hour of full immunity to the mist's toxins with no side effects if swallowed. The Mist Shop refresh card could immediately refresh the shop's items independent of its normal 24-hour cycle, and the partial map would randomly reveal a section of his current region, marking both dangers and supplies. He opened the map right away, and a detailed 3-dimensional projection appeared before him. The small house marker was his own shelter, right where he currently stood, with the map's range centered on it in a roughly triangular spread. Red dots marked danger, small star icons marked supplies of varying levels, and Yi-Han thought it looked like a genuinely divine artifact, though a rough-scale calculation told him the covered area was only about the size of a standard football field. Scanning the marks, he counted 3 red dots. 2 sat right next to each other, paired with a small gray house icon, and he guessed that this meant a survivor had likely been killed by some exotic beast out in the mist and, per the precautions, mutated into a monster after death, accounting for both the house and the 2 red dots together. The 3rd red dot sat unsettlingly close to his own position, just a short walk past the small hill ahead, making him frown and wonder what kind of exotic beast might be waiting there. On that same hill, he spotted a patch of 1-star marks alongside 2 2-star marks, which he took to be the bitter seed potatoes and azure stones he already knew about. Beyond that, near the close red dot, sat a 3-star mark, a higher grade of supply than the 2-star azure stones, and the best graded point visible anywhere on the current map. Studying it all, he began mapping out a route in his mind. He then opened the mist shop and used his refresh card. 3 new items appeared at once. 1 kilogram of beef jerky for 10 mist coins, 1 L of gasoline that came with a lighter for 20 mist coins, and a pair of alloy arm guards for 50 mist coins. All genuinely good finds. By now Yi-Han had figured out that the 30-coin price on the Talent Awakening must be a special welfare rate entirely separate from the shop's normal pricing, since otherwise there was no way the arm guards alone could cost more than an entire Talent Awakening. Everyone only needing 30 mist coins for a talent struck him as remarkably generous. He decided the arm guards were a must-buy, and the other 2 items were worth grabbing too. He'd clear out the shop again if he could. His plan formed quickly. Head to the small hill ahead, dig up more azure stones, sell them, and use the proceeds to buy the arm guards, after which he'd have both defense and a weapon solid enough to push further out for more supplies. Settling on this, he swallowed a detoxification pill, stepped out of the cottage, and made straight for the hill. Digging as fast as he could and following the map's markers, he quickly turned up 2 more azure stones, larger ones this time, totaling around 8 kilograms, which by his estimate should be worth about 80 mist coins, enough to clear the entire current round of the shop. Selling both stones to the mist shop on the spot, he actually received 85 mist coins. Without hesitating, he bought out the shop completely again. The beef jerky, the gasoline with its lighter, and the alloy arm guards all appeared instantly in his supplies column. His mist coin balance dropping by 80 in the process, leaving him with 22 coins remaining, still a decent cushion. But right then, a red font warning flashed before his eyes. His supplies column had a storage limit of 10 kilograms, and he'd already exceeded it. He needed to remove the excess weight immediately or risk having items randomly cleared, with a countdown already ticking down from 10, 9, 8, 7. Seeing this, Yi-Han's whole body went tense. The storage limit was exactly the concern he'd been turning over in his mind just moments earlier. As the countdown hit 5, Yi-Han pulled out the alloy arm guards without hesitation, and the red warning text vanished at once, replaced by a fresh readout above his material column. 3, 12 tenths. Sure enough, the arm guards had been the culprit for the overweight warning. Holding the pair in his hands, they felt genuinely heavy, each one weighing roughly 10 caddies by his estimate, 20 caddies for the set. Their description confirmed as much, crafted from some mysterious alloy, slightly heavy but offering extremely high defense, meant to be raised to block a beast's bite. A thought struck him, and he tried his enlightenment talent on them just to see the preview, even knowing his daily use was already spent and wouldn't refresh until tomorrow. The prompt confirmed that enlightenment could upgrade the alloy arm guards into super alloy arm guards, boosting their strength while cutting their weight, though it noted he currently lacked the counts to perform it. Pleased that his guess had been right again, Yi-Han decided the arm guards were usable as they were for now, even if the weight would take some getting used to, and resolved to enlighten them the next day. He strapped them onto both forearms. Silver white, unpretentious, glowing faintly with a mysterious metallic sheen, fitting snugly and giving him a real sense of security. He then dug up every bitter seed potato left on the small hill, packing some into his material column and carrying the rest in his arms back to the thatched cottage, already thinking that the column's storage would need upgrading sooner or later, since exploring with such a limited carrying capacity was going to be a real hassle for now. Back inside, he emptied everything out, then repacked the column with some water and beef jerky, along with the gasoline and lighter, for a total of 5 kilograms. Wearing the arm guards and gripping the sharp machete, he set out again. This time heading straight for the red dot marked dangerously close to his position. He decided to take the fight to it directly, reasoning that the shelter might block the mist but couldn't necessarily stop a mist beast, and that his cottage right now had essentially zero defense of its own. Better to eliminate the threat himself than wait for it to come find him. Thanks to the map, he knew there was nothing else dangerous nearby, and having already taken a detoxification pill, the mist's toxins were no concern either. It felt, he thought, almost like playing a battle royale game with a wall hack, free to walk straight toward the enemy without worrying about anything else. 5 minutes later, he spotted the 3-star mark first. A fruit tree, tall and lush at over 5 meters, rising strangely out of the gray murk of the mist. A single fist-sized fruit hung from its branches, lantern-shaped, glowing with a hazy light blue fluorescence, and around it the mist had visibly thinned, the air unusually clean. Clearly something worth taking. Then he spotted the red dot. Hidden in the tree's canopy was a huge spider, a full one, 5 meters long, 8 furred legs gripping the branches for balance, 2 rows of eyes, 8 total. Burning with a bloodthirsty light as they fixed on him, its sharp mouthparts gleaming cold like steel blades. His scalp went numb at the sight. This had to be the mist beast the warnings had spoken of, and his legs trembled slightly at how genuinely terrifying it looked. The spider spotted him in the same instant, and a finger-thick strand of silk shot out from the spinneret at its abdomen with a sharp whoosh, streaking straight for him. He raised his arms just in time. The silk wrapped around his left arm, and a tremendous force immediately tried to haul him up toward the tree, the strand sticky and reeking with a fishy stench that nearly made him gag. Before he could think, his body was already being dragged forward, and he cursed the spider aloud as adrenaline surged through him, sharpening his reflexes. Swinging the machete in his right hand, he sliced clean through the silk and regained his footing, glaring up at the spider in the canopy. It kept firing, strand after strand, and Yi Han dodged what he could and hacked through the rest, his body gradually getting coated in sticky silk that left him deeply uncomfortable. The worst moment came when a strand wrapped around his right arm, robbing him of his sword hand. But he quickly switched the machete to his left and cut himself free, escaping the danger. Panting hard, he stepped back to put distance between them, aware that this mist beast could leap and moved fast enough that keeping his range mattered. An idea came to him. Burn it with the gasoline he'd just bought. He pulled the red plastic bucket of gasoline from his material column and held it, waiting for an opening. If the spider spun more silk, he'd let the strand snag the bucket, then find a way to ignite it. But instead, perhaps having exhausted its silk for the moment, the spider abandoned ranged attacks and launched itself bodily from the canopy with a heavy boom, a fishy gust sweeping toward him as branches cracked and snapped behind it. Only then did Yi Han notice the bizarre, distorted human face pattern on its back, hair-raising to look at. It hit the ground and came at him fast, legs scrambling, mouth parts snapping open to shred him. He cursed and hurled the gasoline bucket straight at it. The spider, not recognizing the object, made no attempt to dodge and simply crushed it between its mouthparts, releasing a strong reek of gasoline into the air. Seizing the opening, Yi Han immediately threw the lighter after it too, aiming for the same sharp mouthparts. Too small to guarantee a hit on its own, and too dangerous to light by hand up close, so a thrown shot was his only option. It connected. With a boom, the lighter burst and flames erupted, engulfing the spider's mouth and head. Its fur crackled and popped under the heat, the air filling with the smell of burnt protein as the creature thrashed and screamed, its legs tearing deep gouges into the ground and throwing up clouds of soil. Yi Han didn't look back. Getting caught by that spider now would mean serious injury if not death, and ran. As he fled, he kept watching the map, tracking the red dot's movement, and saw that it wasn't chasing him at all, just spinning in place. Blinded and disoriented by the flames, unable to give pursuit. All that was left now was to wait for it to burn out. Yi Han fled all the way back behind the small hill and waited there for the spider to finish burning to death, keeping constant watch on the red mark on the map so he could react the moment anything changed. The mark that represented the spider kept spinning in place, its movement growing slower and slower by the second. He mused to himself that the map really was a remarkable thing, letting him track something his eyes couldn't even see, though he wished its range covered more ground. Then came a loud boom, strong enough to shake the earth beneath him. and he spun around in alarm, terrified his thatched cottage might have collapsed. But it stood fine. He guessed the noise had probably been the big tree falling over. A moment later, a new prompt appeared on his survival panel, congratulating him on killing the 2-star mist beast known as the human-faced giant spider and rewarding him with a silver treasure chest, which had already appeared in his material column. He gave the mental command to open it while walking toward where the spider and tree had fallen, noting that with the spider dead, its red dot had vanished from the map and the area was now fully safe. The chest yielded a detoxification pill formula blueprint and 30 g of salt and pepper, both genuinely valuable finds. The detoxification pill was already something of a marvel to him, granting a full hour of immunity to the mist's toxins with no side effects. And having the formula meant he could keep producing them himself once he gathered the right materials. Salt and pepper mattered just as much, since the body needed regular salt intake or risked weakness and illness severe enough to be fatal. The formula itself called for 3 ingredients: fluorescent fruit, beast blood, and ammonium cardamom, mixed in a specific ratio and heated for a set time. Beast blood, he figured, was easy enough given the spider right in front of him. The fluorescent fruit might well be the glowing fruit from the tree, but ammonium cardamom meant nothing to him at all. By then he'd reached the scene. The human-faced giant spider lying dead on the ground, still trailing wisps of black smoke, and beside it the great fruit tree it had knocked over in its fall. Though thankfully the fruit itself remained intact. He hurried over to pick it, only to find the stem far too tough to twist off by hand, so he used the sharp machete to chop it free instead. Once he had it in hand, its description appeared: a fluorescent fruit, a 3-star material used in making detoxification pills, unable to be eaten directly, with a mist shop recycling price of 50 mist coins per kilogram. This was indeed the fruit he'd hoped for, and an expensive one at that. Weighing it in his palm, it was roughly apple-sized, but around 2 kilograms, meaning the single fruit alone was worth 100 mist coins. He decided immediately that he wouldn't sell it, choosing to keep it for his own use instead, and stored it in his material column. Turning to the fallen tree, its description explained that the fluorescent fruit tree grew across the mist continent and could bear 10 fluorescent fruits every month. Its essence concentrated entirely in the fruit, leaving the branches and trunk as nothing more than ordinary building material. Yi Han was stunned. 10 fruits a month meant 1,000 mist coins monthly from a single tree, and he felt like he'd just missed out on a fortune. Realizing the other 9 fruits must have already been eaten by the spider, and now that the tree had fallen, it would never bear fruit again. Furious, he hacked at the spider's head with his machete, cursing it for the loss. In the same moment, the spider's own description came up. A huge 2-star mist beast, extremely dangerous, but valuable in every part. Its meat could restore physical strength when eaten. Its venom sacs had wide-ranging uses, and its silk made for good material besides. That lifted his mood a little. Even without the extra fruit, killing this thing had been a genuine haul. He set about processing the carcass with the machete, harvesting a fist-sized venom sac from its belly, its hard outer cuticle concealing a core full of green venom inside. Its description marked it as a 3-star material, the essence of the human-faced giant spider, containing a strongly acidic and corrosive venom, also recycling at 50 mist coins per kilogram at the mist shop. Roughly the same weight as the fluorescent fruit, and thus worth about 100 mist coins as well. He decided to keep this one too, rather than sell it, reasoning it could prove life-saving if used correctly in an emergency. Next came the spider silk. Nothing left inside the carcass, but he gathered up everything the spider had spat out earlier during the fight, piling it together. Its description listed it as a 2-star material usable for making various kinds of clothing after processing, recycling at 10 mist coins per kilogram. Looking at the small mountain of silk in front of him, he decided to sell all of it on the spot, since there was no need to make everything himself out here. The sale brought in 82 mist coins, bringing his total to 104, a small fortune that left him feeling genuinely secure. He then turned to what remained of the spider itself. Setting aside the organs, head, and burnt sections he had no interest in eating, there was still a solid 100 caddies or so of usable spider meat left. Aware that his detoxification pill had only 10 minutes of effect remaining, he hurried to haul all the meat back to the cottage while he still could, and by the time he made it through the door, the pill's effect had fully worn off. He rushed inside to rest, panting hard and wiping sweat from his forehead, drank some water, and chewed on dried beef to recover his strength. As he caught his breath, He opened his survival panel to check on things. Right as a new world announcement appeared, survivor Leng Feng, identified by a survivor ID, had become the first to upgrade a shelter and received a golden treasure chest as reward. And alongside it, the survivor trading system had opened, adding a trading post to every survivor's panel for trading with one another. Someone had already been the first to upgrade their shelter, and the sheer speed of it stunned Yihan. His survival panel let him check the requirements. Every survivor started with a 1-star shelter, nothing more than a wind-battered thatched cottage. And upgrading to 2-star demanded 3 things at once: 500 kilograms of wood, 100 kilograms of 2-star stone, and 100 mist coins, each one brutally difficult to meet. The whole reason the mist storm was set to arrive only after 7 days was to give everyone that stretch of time to upgrade, yet global mist survival had barely been running for just over an hour, and someone had already done it. Yihan sighed to himself, thinking whoever managed this had to be both powerful and remarkably lucky. After all, he himself had only found 4 pieces of 2-star stone so far, adding up to less than 20 kilograms, while this Leng Feng had apparently gathered a full 100 kilograms almost instantly, suggesting there might be an actual mine sitting near their shelter. The World Chat channel was in an uproar over the news, filled with disbelief that this was even possible. People complaining they couldn't scrape together the 30 mist coins needed just to awaken a talent while someone else had already upgraded their shelter. Others confused about what 2-star stone even was after finding nothing outside their own cottages. Accusations flying that certain players must be cheating, and amid it all a genuine cry for help from someone whose cottage was under attack by a giant snake. Yihan skimmed past the chaos and opened the newly added trading post on his panel, curious whether survivors trading with one another had turned up anything worthwhile. The very first listing nearly made him laugh out loud in disbelief. 500 G of black bread for 20 mist coins, clearly someone desperate to scrape together enough for a talent awakening, sitting there hoping some fool would bite. Browsing further, he found similarly outrageous prices everywhere: 1 kilogram of wood for 10 mist coins, 1 L of purified water for 20, black flint, a 2-star stone, going for 50 mist coins per kilogram. It was daylight robbery all around. But he reasoned that with prices this chaotic in a freshly opened market, there had to be bargains hidden somewhere too. And with over 7 billion survivors participating, surely not everyone would be pricing things absurdly high. Scanning quickly, he found exactly that. 1 L of purified water for just 1 mist coin, star sapphire, another 2-star stone, going for 10 kilograms at only 5 mist coins, and even iron essence, a 3-star material, listed at a mere 2 mist coins per kilogram, which he snapped up without a second thought. He kept buying aggressively, stacking his hoard inside the cottage, and before long had spent 36 mist coins on a genuinely massive haul. 5 L of purified water, and 39 kilograms combined across 3 types of 2-star stone: star sapphire, black flint, and purple bloodstone. Whenever a cheap 3-star material popped up on refresh, he grabbed it immediately. At one point, he spotted jiangxia, a 2-star material and a key ingredient for the detoxification pill, but it was priced at 30 mist coins per kilogram, far too steep for him to touch, so he shook his head and kept hunting for better deals. It was a genuine frenzy, and Yihan wasn't the only one who'd realized bargains were there for the taking. Countless others were doing the same, all fighting over the same underpriced listings. But having the eye for a bargain meant nothing without the coins to back it up. And truly wealthy survivors sitting on over 100 mist coins were still rare. Even holding that much didn't stretch far once the buying started. Yihan soon realized his balance had dwindled sharply, down to just 18 mist coins remaining, meaning he'd burned through 86 in his shopping spree. Struck by the thought of raising more funds, he began looking into selling some of what he had. Prices across the market were still wildly inconsistent. Identical items listed anywhere from astronomical figures to a single mist coin. Total disorder for now, though he expected things would eventually settle into a stable range shaped by several factors. The mist shop's own recycling price would always set a natural floor, since no rational seller would go lower than what the shop itself paid. And broader survivor progress would shift demand too. Right now, with everyone scrambling for 2-star stone to upgrade their shelters, its true market value was bound to stay high, though it would eventually crash once most shelters no longer needed it. Curious, he checked the mist shop's recycling price for iron essence, the 3-star material he'd bought cheap earlier: 50 mist coins per kilogram, a huge margin from what he'd paid. but a notice attached to it stopped him cold. The item was currently under a trading protection period and couldn't be traded at all, with a countdown reading 71 hours, 38 minutes, and 49 seconds remaining. A 3-day lock, he realized, deliberately designed to choke off large-scale speculative flipping and stop anyone from making a windfall off freshly bought bargains. With everything he'd just purchased untradeable, the Mist Shop wouldn't buy it back either, and it couldn't be listed for others. He needed another way to recoup funds, and settled on selling some of his spider meat instead. It was a 2-star material with a Mist Shop recycling price of 10 mist coins per kilogram, but he had no intention of selling it that cheap. After some thought, he listed 1 kilogram at 30 mist coins as a test. The trading system's own description of the item read out: human-faced giant spider meat, a 2-star material sourced from the 2-star mist beast of the same name, rich in nutrients able to quickly replenish the body's trace elements while restoring physical strength and endurance. Genuinely valuable at this stage, given how central food, water, upgrading the shelter, and earning mist coins were to every survivor's priorities right now. Everyone had started with only 1 L of purified water and 500 G of black bread. Nowhere near enough for anyone hoping to actually develop and push forward, meaning meat to fuel their strength before heading back out was exactly what people needed. Yihan's instinct proved right. The moment his 1 kilogram listing of spider meat went up, it sold almost instantly. The spider meat sold instantly, and it made Yihan realize he'd priced it too low. He should have gone higher. So he listed another kilogram, this time at 50 mist coins, and it vanished from the listing just as fast. There were still plenty of wealthy people out there, he thought, and this early stage was exactly when the gap between survivors was starting to form. Fall 1 step behind now, and every step after would fall behind too. He was ahead thanks to being first to awaken a talent, but plenty of others were doing just fine as well. With over 7 billion people participating worldwide, there were bound to be plenty who didn't understand the market and sold cheap, but just as many sharp, capable operators finding their own edge. Checking his gains, selling 2 kilograms of spider meat had brought in 72 mist coins after the trading post's tax took 8 out of what should have been 80. Satisfied enough, he dove back into the trading post to sweep up more bargains, spending every last one of his current 90 mist coins without hesitation. This time picking up 3 kilograms of spice and a fluorescent fruit at cheap prices, along with enough 2-star stone to finally reach 100 kilograms total. With mist coins no longer a real worry, given how easily spider meat sales replenish them, wood was now his only missing requirement for the shelter upgrade. He scrolled past plenty of cheap wood listings without buying, since he'd originally planned to drag the fallen fluorescent fruit tree back and use it as building material. But reconsidering, moving something that massive would be far too laborious, likely more than even his remaining 2 detoxification pills could get him through, and the cost simply wasn't worth it compared to just buying wood outright. Decisive as ever, he listed another kilogram of spider meat, this time at 100 mist coins, and this time it didn't sell instantly. The price was clearly pushing the edge of what people were willing to pay. Elsewhere, inside a shelter built from wood and stone, a sturdy, middle-aged man scowled at his own trading market screen, tearing into a piece of freshly roasted spider meat while grumbling about how fast prices were climbing. 30 coins one moment, 100 the next, calling it outright robbery and swearing he'd beat the seller senseless if he ever met him in person, all while admitting his own talent, though good, burned through too much food. He cursed under his breath but bought the meat anyway. On Yihan's end, 90 mist coins landed in his account after tax, and grinning, he turned straight to buying wood. Refreshing the trading post, he found a large stock at rock-bottom prices, 10 kilograms for 1 mist coin, and immediately spent 30 mist coins on 300 kilograms of it, which appeared in his supplies inventory and instantly overflowed it, forcing him to rush outside and physically retrieve the wood. Still short 200 kilograms, he kept refreshing while muttering for the seller to restock, and in the meantime relisted another kilogram of spider meat at the same 100 mist coins, waiting for whoever was fated to buy it. About half an hour later, someone did, netting him another 90 mist coins, and he successfully bought the remaining 200 kilograms of wood he needed. With that, he finally met every requirement to upgrade his shelter. 500 kilograms of wood, 100 kilograms of 2-star stone, and 100 mist coins. He chose to upgrade at once. Standing outside the wooden house, holding his breath, he watched a dazzling flash of white light sweep the pile of materials away entirely, 100 mist coins deducting from his balance and leaving him with 30. The thatched cottage that had leaked wind from every side vanished, replaced by a cabin built from wood and stone. Its description read, a 2-star shelter, sturdy and reliable, built to withstand attacks from most 2-star mist beasts, complete with a single wooden bed. Yihan nodded in satisfaction. Even if the human-faced spider somehow came back to life, this defense might well hold against it. Stepping inside, he roughly gauged the space at around 30 square meters, far more spacious than before. With the wooden bed a hard but welcome improvement over sleeping on the floor, he lay down on it and let out a long breath. Taking stock of what he had, he found he already possessed all 3 ingredients for the detoxification pill: fluorescent fruit, spice, and beast blood. The last of which was the human-faced spider's own blood, which he'd collected using a piece of the spider's own thick, liquid-tight hide as a container, sealed afterward with spider silk into makeshift blood bags. Beyond those 3 essentials, he had a decent pile of other bargain-bought supplies too, useful or not, which he figured he'd simply hoard for now. Overall, he was quite pleased with his current standing, surely in the absolute top tier, T0 level even, ahead of everyone else. But he wasn't planning to sit still. Having already eaten some beef jerky and recovered his strength, Yihan decided to head back out, this time targeting the 2 red dots that had appeared clustered together on the map. Watching them, he'd noticed they were constantly moving, and moving straight toward him. He decided to strike first, reasoning that at least one of the pair had to be a mist beast, and killing one meant not just a solid haul, but a treasure chest drop too, always full of good things. Without wasting time, he took a deep breath, gripped his sharp machete, strapped on the alloy arm guards, swallowed a detoxification pill, and stepped out of his new wood and stone cabin, heading straight toward the 2 red dots. At that point, the pair were roughly 100 meters apart, one trailing the other, both advancing steadily in his direction. When he closed to about 50 meters from the first, he stopped, dropped low behind a small rise, and settled into hiding. Even with the mist's toxins no longer a threat to him, the visibility was still too poor to see anything. All he had were faint footsteps to go on. Gripping the machete tightly, he stared ahead without blinking. The footsteps were light, almost human, but dragging rather than walking properly, accompanied by low, strange cries. A figure slowly took shape out of the mist, and along with the bitter tang already in the air came a new, creeping stench of decay. As the shape sharpened, Yihan's eyes widened. This was unmistakably a survivor, dressed in the same standard-issue clothes he himself wore. But a large chunk of flesh was missing from the figure's neck. A gaping hole tore through its stomach, exposing bone and organs beneath. Its eyes had turned an eerie gray. Gray lines streaked across its face and hands, and its open mouth let out inhuman, broken cries. It was clearly dead, and yet it moved. The dead had returned. This was a walking corpse. The line from the precautions came rushing back to him. Even death offered no peace here, only a terrible mutation into something monstrous. And Yihan shuddered, understanding now exactly what it meant. Survivors who died got infected by the mist's toxin and turned into something like zombies. It didn't even necessarily require death, he realized. Someone who simply breathed in enough of the toxin over time might end up the same way. Just then, the dead survivor in front of him seemed to notice him, letting out a beast-like roar and surging forward with sudden speed, charging straight for the hill where he was hiding. He hadn't made a sound, so it must have caught his scent or body heat instead. Rather than wait, Yihan stood and moved to attack first. There was still an unidentified red dot behind this one, likely a mist beast, and he needed this zombie dealt with before he risked fighting 2 enemies at once. He charged in with long strides and brought the machete down on its head, trusting his instinct that the head was this creature's weak point. The blade cut clean through the mist and struck true. The zombie's grasping arms and snapping jaws went still the instant the blow landed, its skull split open and leaking thick gray blood as it collapsed. One strike, dead. Still riding the heat of having just killed a spider, Yihan grinned and shook the blood from his blade, but stayed alert, retreating back behind the hill to keep watching the mist ahead. The last red dot within his map's range was closing in, and soon he could hear heavy footsteps and breathing, the mist itself beginning to stir. A sure sign of something large, a mist beast emerged before him, a giant wolf, easily the size of a compact car, blood staining its mouth and claws, radiating an oppressive presence that made his heart start racing. What star level was this thing? surely no weaker than the human-faced spider. In the next instant, the wolf's paw came down on the zombie's belly, bursting it open in a fresh spray of gore, its headlight-bright eyes locking onto the hill with pure bloodlust and madness. If a mere zombie could sense him, a genuine mist beast's senses would be sharper still. It roared and lunged, closing the distance like a car slamming its accelerator. Yi-Han's hair stood on end. The zombie had been nothing. This wolf was an absolute king. The ground shook, wine tore through the mist, and in a blink the wolf was already on him. His adrenaline surged and forced a decision. Going head-on would be suicide, so he'd have to dodge and wait for openings. He threw himself aside just as the wolf lunged, missing him and sending a spray of soil into the air as its paw pain flared from a slashy hand managed to land in passing. Grinning, he shouted to fire himself up and immediately fell back to widen the gap, disappointed only that the machete hadn't managed to sever the leg entirely, blocked by bone. Clearly not sharp enough yet. Enlightenment might fix that later. Wolf blood soaked the ground as the beast roared in fury, clearly registering that this opponent, unlike the zombie, could actually hurt it. The pain only made it angrier, and it howled and charged again. Slower this time, its injured leg dragging at its speed. Yi-Han dodged again, landing another slash, aiming for the neck but only opening a gash across its back instead. Struck again and bleeding, the wolf began to go berserk, its howl piercing enough to hurt his ears. And then Yi-Han noticed the wounds on its body were actually closing up. Shocked, he wondered what level of beast could regenerate like that, and sensed its aura growing stronger by the moment, its very size beginning to swell. It clicked for him at once. It was evolving, already this dangerous. If it finished evolving, he'd almost certainly be finished too, so he couldn't let that happen. With a pang of reluctance, he pulled the spider venom sac from his inventory. The very reason he'd felt confident attacking in the first place, though he'd hoped to save it if he could win without it. Now there was no choice. Gripping the sack in his left hand and the machete in his right, he rushed the wolf while it was mid-evolution. Seeing him charge, the wolf opened its jaws wide and roared, a foul wind hitting him hard enough to turn his stomach. But the opening was perfect, and pushing through the nausea, he hurled the venom sac straight into its open mouth. The wolf bit down on reflex, bursting the sac and coating its mouth in dark green venom, and immediately began shrieking in agony, leaping straight up in pain, droplets of venom hitting the ground and smoking on contact. Yi-Han didn't linger. A single drop on him now would mean serious trouble, especially with the wolf caught between the height of its evolution and the agony of venom corrosion, driving it into total madness. Just as with the burning spider before, his plan was to retreat and wait it out. He ran a good distance, stopped, and watched the map. The red dot had gone still. After roughly 10 more minutes, it remained motionless. But with no prompt or reward yet, the wolf clearly wasn't dead. He stayed put, wary of a final desperate counterattack, and waited another dozen minutes before the message finally came. Congratulations on killing the 3-star mist beast, the bloodthirsty giant wolf, earning a golden treasure chest. Followed immediately by a world announcement naming Yi-Han by his survivor id as the first to kill a 3-star mist beast, earning a second golden treasure chest as reward. 2 golden treasure chests, back to back. The giant wolf had been a genuine 3-star mist beast. Yi-Han pieced together that it must have started as a 2-star creature, evolving into 3-star right in the middle of their fight, only to die anyway. 2 golden treasure chests at once left him thrilled as he strode toward the wolf's corpse to open them. Each one yielded a single card, but both were extraordinarily valuable. A fixed-point relocation card, letting a survivor freely relocate to any location of their choosing simply by physically reaching the target site and using the card there. Precious enough to carry a cooldown after use and worth choosing carefully. And a talent upgrade card, which did exactly what its name suggested. He used the second one without hesitation, and the system congratulated him on successfully upgrading his Enlightenment talent to level 2, now usable twice a day, and carrying a small chance of triggering a critical hit that granted enlightened items special attributes. Since he'd already used 1 Enlightenment today, he had 1 use left, and decided there was no rush to spend it. By then he'd reached the wolf's body, and the scene around it was devastating. Craters of every size pitting the ground, the air thick with a harsh, pungent smell. The zombie had been trampled and crushed beyond recognition during the fight. The wolf's own corpse lay where the small hill used to stand, the hill itself now flattened entirely. Yi-Han clicked his tongue at the sight of the venom damage. The head was almost completely gone, but got straight to work, processing the carcass, knowing a 3-star beast's remains would be worth even more than the spider's had been. While he worked, the world chat channel erupted over him again. Tens of millions of messages a second flooding through as people reacted to the news. Disbelief over who this Yihan even was. Speculation that he had to be some kind of veteran or insider, given he'd been first to awaken a talent and first to kill a 3-star beast. Accusations aimed at players from the Dragon Country for supposedly cheating. Someone marveling that even a 1-star mist beast dog had nearly beaten them while Yihan had taken down a full 3-star. Requests for loans of mist coins to afford a talent awakening. And even someone claiming to be Qin Shi Huang, offering protection in exchange for people's mist coins with promises of titles once he unified the mist continent. Yihan found it all fairly amusing as he kept working, hacking wolf meat free with the machete and piling it onto the stripped wolf skin beside him, discarding anything touched by venom without a second thought. Only the clean meat mattered. He worked fast, racing to get back to the shelter before his detoxification pill wore off, all the while turning over how to spend his remaining enlightenment use for the day, since unused charges didn't carry over. They simply expired. He weighed his options. The alloy arm guards could become super alloy arm guards. The sharp machete could be enlightened into something that cut through iron like mud. Even the detoxification pill could become a 2-star version with a 3-hour duration instead of 1. And plenty of other supplies had potential too. Wrapping the cut wolf meat in the wolf's own skin, he finally settled on the machete. A flash of light later, the blade looked much the same on the outside, but he could feel a cold, terrifying edge now flickering along it. Swinging it against one of the wolf's own leg bones, the bone sheared clean off, the cut surface mirror smooth. He couldn't help but sigh, thinking that if the blade had been this sharp during the fight, a single slash could have crippled the wolf outright. Though this particular enlightenment hadn't triggered a critical hit, he hauled the wolf meat home, making it back into the timberstone cabin just as his detoxification pill's effect ran out, and collapsed onto the wooden bed, wiping sweat from his brow, thoroughly exhausted. He hadn't had a moment's rest since entering the mist survival. After catching his breath and drinking some water, he chewed on beef jerky and thought through his next moves. The area within his map's current range was fully cleared of danger now, but the map's range itself was frustratingly limited. A genuinely broken item in some ways, but with real constraints too, since it now showed nothing but a handful of 1-star supply points not even worth the trip, given that 1-star supplies were the lowest grade around, so low the mist shop wouldn't even buy them back. With only 1 detoxification pill left, refining more was his next priority, and beyond that, he was starting to think about relocating. His current region, Withered Mountain Z1, sounded exactly as barren as its name suggested. Moving between regions entirely would be difficult for now. But at minimum, he wanted to find somewhere richer to develop from, since there were clearly no good supply points left around him, and surely some luckier survivors had spawned right next to a mine or valuable resources. His immediate plan was simpler: buy wood and a fire source so he could refine detoxification pills and cook meat, rest briefly, then head back out to explore. He opened the trading post to hunt for cheap supplies. Wood was easy, but fire sources were scarce. After refreshing for a while, he spotted a lighter listed for 20 mist coins, only to have someone else snatch it up before he could buy it. Muttering that he couldn't very well start a fire by rubbing sticks together, he kept refreshing, and this time turned up an iron pot for 30 mist coins. His eyes lit up, and he bought it immediately. Buying the pot had cleaned out Yihan's mist coin balance entirely, so if he wanted to afford a fire source like a lighter, he'd need to sell something more. He listed another kilogram of spider meat, but this time nothing happened. No buyer came, no matter how long he waited, leaving him wondering if people had simply grown tired of spider meat. He decided to try wolf meat instead, listing a kilogram at 200 mist coins straight off, reasoning that meat from a 3-star mist beast was a full grade above spider meat, and, at this stage, essentially a one-of-a-kind rarity worth pricing accordingly. Elsewhere, inside another log and stone cabin, a well-built middle-aged man scowled at that same listing, muttering suspicions that the seller had to be that Yihan from the World Announcements, probably the same person behind the earlier spider meat price gouging too, and grumbling that he'd have to buy it anyway despite wanting to punch the guy. He bought the kilogram for the full 200 mist coins. On Yihan's end, the sale landed him 180 mist coins after tax, and he laughed to himself that there were still plenty of rich buyers out there deciding to move quickly on wood and, more importantly, a fire source. Refreshing the trading post, he found a huge pile of wood for just 1 mist coin, and after more searching, a lighter for a full 50 mist coins, pricier but genuinely better, windproof unlike the one that had come free with his earlier gasoline purchase. With that, he was finally ready to try his hand at alchemy, amused at the thought that the novels he used to read always had characters using heavenly sacred fire and ornate cauldrons, while all he had was an ordinary iron pot. Following the steps on his blueprint, he started with beast blood in the pot, then added jiangxia. Mixing and heating the two together as a strange scent began filling his shelter. Floral notes mixed with something sandalwood-like, then a fishy sweetness. Once bubbles began forming, he added the mashed fluorescent fruit, and the mixture thickened as its scent shifted, eventually smelling close enough to his existing detoxification pill that he felt confident it was working. Knowing how essential these pills were, without one, even a single step through the heavy mist would be a struggle. He was thrilled. Once it seemed done, he pulled the pot off the fire to cool nearby and turned to grilling, cooking up some spider meat and wolf meat to sample both, sprinkling on salt and pepper once the meat was sizzling and glistening with oil. The spider meat tasted like crunchy chicken, matching its description of restoring physical strength and endurance, while the wolf meat, matching its own description of boosting strength and slightly increasing movement speed, smelled and tasted genuinely excellent. Surprising, since he'd heard normal wolf meat was sour and unpleasant, but mist beast meat clearly played by different rules. After a satisfying meal, he moved on to rolling the cooled, solidified medicinal liquid into individual pills by hand, ending up with a full 10 detoxification pills. Combined with the one he already had, that made 11, enough time in the mist, he figured, to find himself a new place to settle. He planned to use the fixed-point relocation card soon, to find somewhere richer and settle temporarily. Both his gasoline and venom sack were already used up, and even with his iron-cutting machete in hand, he still didn't feel safe enough for a long trek through the mist, which was bound to bring more danger. He needed more tools for self-defense before heading out. Rather than rush, he kept browsing the trading post, though bargains had already grown scarce. The people who'd been dumping cheap supplies earlier had nothing left to sell, and were likely to be among the first eliminated. He reflected grimly that among the billions transmigrated, there had to be plenty of disabled, elderly, and very young people with almost no chance of survival. To whatever power had brought everyone here, humanity might be nothing more than ants, the way he himself, as a child, had once burned ants under a magnifying glass without a thought for how they died. He shook the thought off, unwilling to dwell on it. After more searching, he still hadn't found what he wanted. Items like spider venom sacks and gasoline, genuinely useful for punching above his weight, simply weren't appearing on the market anymore. He realized his mistake. He was sitting near the absolute top tier himself now, and he certainly wouldn't sell off his own life-saving items either. The same logic applied to every strong player out there, while the weak, by definition, had nothing good to sell in the first place. Eyes tired from refreshing, he gave up on the trading post and decided to go find what he needed himself. He packed grilled spider meat, grilled wolf meat, water, his detoxification pills, the arm guards, and the machete, then stepped out of his shelter and pushed into the endless mist, heading toward the small gray house marker on his map. The spot where the zombies' shelter had apparently once stood before its owner died. He could feel the effects of the grilled meat as he moved, especially the wolf meat, his strength feeling greater and his stride noticeably lighter. Striding forward quickly, guided by the map like he had eyes that could see straight through the mist to every resource and danger, he arrived at the house marker in no time. There was indeed a thatched cottage shelter there, but it had already collapsed. Ahead lay a scene of pure wreckage, scattered thatch everywhere, chaotic footprints and claw marks tangled together in the dirt. Bloodstains spread across the ground. Yihan pieced together what had happened. This survivor had been bitten to death by a giant wolf, then infected by the mist's toxin and turned into a zombie. Something caught his eye beneath a pile of thatch, and approaching, he found a large, still-sealed 1L bottle of water. Clearly the leftover from this person's opened welfare pack, along with their black bread, which he pocketed at once. The bread itself, though, was ruined, trampled into the soil by the wolf and no longer edible. Finding nothing else worth taking, he moved on, though pressing much further would take him beyond his map's range entirely. So he slowed his pace and stayed on high alert, well aware that without the map's guidance, he had no way of knowing what dangers might be lurking in the mist. He crossed a stretch of rubble, frustrated by how little he could see through the low visibility. An hour passed without a single discovery. He ate a detoxification pill, drank some water, and rested a moment, opening the world chat channel only to find it far too overwhelming to make sense of, before switching to check his own regional channel instead. His region seemed unusually quiet, whether from too few survivors or simple silence he couldn't tell. The chatter he did find ranged from people asking about teaming up after seeing a world announcement reward 2 players for partnering, to fear over reports of someone already killing other survivors, warnings not to trust anyone, a female college student pleading for help, someone lamenting several fruitless trips out into the mist, complaints about the region's grim name, withered mountains, and, absurdly, someone asking how to get back home since they hadn't finished their daily quests in some game. Yihan shook his head at that last one. Being spawned into this world wouldn't save someone still thinking about game dailies. They were as good as doomed. After resting, he pressed on, and it wasn't long before he made a real discovery, a stream running clear in front of him. He crouched to look at the water, tempting as it looked, though he had no intention of drinking it untreated. He reasoned that following the water's flow made sense strategically. Wherever there was water, beasts would come to drink, giving him targets to hunt, and if the stream fed into a lake somewhere, there might be fish to find too. Encouraged, he pushed forward for over an hour, tracking the flow, the sound of running water always nearby as he checked over his shoulder periodically for danger. His second detoxification pill's effect ran out along the way. 2 hours had passed already, and he took another before continuing. Then, ahead, broken walls and ruins came into view, lifting his spirits at once. Approaching carefully, he found himself looking at the remains of an ancient village, wrapped in mist and carrying an unmistakable air of age, clearly abandoned long before any of the current survivors arrived. Mostly built from wood with a handful of stone structures, everything had long since collapsed into ruin. Walking through it, Yihan estimated this had once been a village of over 100 households, noting weathered skulls and scattered stone tools among the wreckage, though he hadn't yet found anything valuable since he hadn't searched thoroughly. He picked a collapsed stone house to check first. Stone construction being a step above wood, with faint mottled patterns still visible on the surface, suggesting it had belonged to someone wealthier or higher status in the village, and therefore more likely to hold something useful. Peering through a wide crack in the stone, his pupils suddenly narrowed. Coiled inside the ruined house, on top of what looked like a bronze-cast treasure chest exuding a mysterious sheen, was a snake. Cyan overall with patches of gray marking its body. A bronze treasure chest, exactly as the wild's random drops had promised. His heart lifted. This was the first real gain from the whole trek. He began working out how to get past the snake to reach it. Even a low-tier chest was still a treasure chest worth having. Just then the snake's eyes opened, its forked tongue flicking as it registered his presence and went on alert, robbing him of any chance at a sneak attack given how sharp its senses were. It moved fast, sweeping across the ground straight toward him. Sizing it up, Yihan judged it smaller and less threatening than the spider or the wolf had been. Likely only a 1-star mist beast guarding the chest. But he refused to let his guard down, reminding himself that even a lion hunts a rabbit with full effort, and that being T0 tier now wouldn't stop him from dying just as easily if he got careless. He stepped back, gripping the machete tightly as the snake slithered out of the crack, rearing its front half up to face him, tongue flicking. Tense and ready, he waited it out as it closed the distance, then cursed and swung. A single flashing cut sliced the creature clean in two, and he immediately retreated further, raising his left arm to shield his face and neck with the arm guard. Good instinct. The severed front half of the snake lunged upward in a dying counterattack, jaws snapping at empty air where he'd stood a moment before. Even beheaded, this kind of creature could still kill with a final bite. He sneered, kept his distance, and watched the rear half thrash on the ground leaking gray-green blood while the front half kept snapping uselessly, refusing to move back in until the prompt finally confirmed the kill. Congratulations on killing the 1-star mist beast, the cyan-gray poison python. True to its low tier, it dropped nothing at all, which mildly annoyed him. Stepping back into the ruined house and over to the python's corpse, he set it aside for now and turned his full attention to the bronze treasure chest waiting inside. Time to collect his reward. Yihan circled the collapsed stone house twice and quickly worked out a plan. He'd only need to shift 2 stones to reach the bronze chest inside. He got straight to work. The first stone came away easily, light enough to move aside without much trouble, dusting off his hands afterward, though the gap it left was only wide enough for a child to squeeze through, not a grown man. The second stone was larger and took considerably more effort, but once it was clear, he finally had room to step into the ruined house. He opened the bronze chest at once. A flash of bronze light swept past and vanished, and in its place sat a light brown leather backpack, the system congratulating him on obtaining a bearskin backpack. His eyes lit up. A proper backpack was exactly what he needed. As convenient as his panel's resource column was, working much like the storage bags from cultivation novels he'd read, its capacity was still limited. While this backpack looked more like the large hiking packs used by mountaineers, clearly built to hold a lot. Its description confirmed as much. Made from the hide of a bear-type mist beast, sturdy and durable, with huge capacity and an ergonomic design, essential gear for outdoor exploration. He put it on and even bounced on his feet a couple of times to test it, satisfied that it hugged his body closely without hindering movement. Finding nothing else of value in the stone house after a thorough search of every corner, he prepared to leave, but not before dealing with the dead snake. Its gallbladder turned out to be a 2-star material, one of the ingredients for 2-star detoxification pills. A fortunate find given he'd managed not to damage it in the kill. He packed away the gallbladder, meat, and skin before moving on, noting that the python had been non-venomous and so hadn't produced any poison sac, a detail that, mist beast or not, matched how things worked back in the world he'd come from. Continuing to explore the ruined village, he found the largest stone house at its center, the least collapsed of any structure he'd seen, and his instincts told him there had to be something good waiting inside. But right there, he spotted footprints. Human ones. Other survivors were nearby. His chest tightened as he scanned his surroundings and found nothing, aware that some survivors had already begun teaming up, while others had turned to outright killing. He had no interest in either path himself, just wanting to develop quickly on his own, but hadn't expected to cross paths with someone else's tracks this soon. Crouching to examine them closely, he confirmed they'd been left by another survivor. The sole pattern matched his own standard issue shoes exactly, though these prints were slightly smaller than his, possibly belonging to a woman. Just then, a python slithered out from the stone house ahead. The same blue-gray species as before, but far larger, its body as thick as a bucket, its front half emerging while the rest remained hidden inside, its full length impossible to guess. Yihan's scalp went numb and he retreated immediately as a thick stench rushed toward him, scattering the mist. This creature had clearly locked onto him and was coming straight for him. The one he'd killed earlier had been nothing compared to this. This was the real boss. Gritting his teeth, he fell back quickly, putting distance between them while swinging his machete defensively. A stone beside him shattered with a bang, gravel exploding outward like shrapnel and stinging painfully across his body, followed immediately by a fierce gust of wind. The snake's tail. Shocked, he threw himself flat to the ground, feeling the massive tail sweep past just above his head. Had he still been standing, his spine would have snapped instantly. He just walked through the gates of hell. Adrenaline surging, he rolled onto his back and swung the machete with both hands, landing a hit. True to its twice-enlightened edge, the blade cut through the tail's end like it was nothing, severing it clean off in a single strike. Foul snake, blood raining down, and nearly making him gag. He scrambled up without hesitating and kept retreating as the python opened its jaws and roared, its massive body writhing and scattering the surrounding mist. Out of the corner of his eye, he caught sight of a figure near the large stone house. A female survivor, wavy-haired and striking in build, her face hidden behind a piece of soaked cloth covering her nose and mouth against the toxins. In that brief glimpse, he thought he saw a flash of pain in her eyes, and wondered whether she was hurting for the python he'd just injured, though he couldn't be sure. He kept retreating, circling around a collapsed wooden house as he traded blows with the python, relying purely on his blade now that he had no gasoline or venom sac left, forced to wear the creature down slowly. It lunged again with a boom, smashing 2 logs to splinters as it snapped for him, its enormous body simultaneously sweeping in to try to wrap around him. The python, being non-venomous, killed through constriction, and given its size, being caught even briefly could shatter every bone in his body. Amid the flying wood debris, he swung for its head, but the creature dodged with surprising agility for something so large, and the slash landed on its neck instead, still sharp enough to carve a deep, bleeding gash. Unwilling to press his luck for more, he retreated behind another collapsed stone house, panting hard, wiping snake blood from his face and spitting. Frowning as the thick, fishy stench and the python's furious hissing roar filled the air, the ground shaking with its rage. Struck twice now by what it clearly saw as a mere insect, the pain driving it to fury. The stone house he'd been hiding behind collapsed too, his nerves stretched taut, adrenaline running high, forced to watch both the python's attacks and the possibility of that female survivor making a move. Fighting as he fell back, he retreated all the way to the village's edge, the python pursuing him relentlessly the entire way. In the process, he managed to land 2 more slashes on it, but took injuries of his own as well. A chunk of rubble struck Yi-Han's left arm, sending a burning jolt of pain through it. But gritting his teeth, he could see the giant python in front of him was in even worse shape, a massive wound gaping open on its neck from where he'd landed another slash. Though the creature was too thick for him to have taken its head off cleanly, he clicked his tongue in disbelief at how it was still alive, retreating as blood trailed everywhere the python moved. Certain it had to be nearly bled out by now. It hissed weakly, visibly slower than before, and made one last desperate lunge, its huge body gouging trenches into the ground as it tried to wrap around him and crush him in a final effort. Yi-Han snorted coldly and swung wildly, the blade tearing through the air and biting into the python's body again and again, too sluggish now to dodge. It took a full meter-long section, chopped clean off its tail before its head finally sagged to the ground, utterly spent. Blood soaked the soil and even tinted the nearby stream. Still cautious, Yi-Han chose to retreat rather than press the attack, falling back further before sitting down, panting hard. Exhausted, he pulled a water bottle from his inventory, splashed some on his face, and drank half of it, refusing, even now, to touch the stream right beside him. He followed the water with a piece of roasted wolf meat to recover his strength. The fight itself had lasted only about 10 minutes, but the tension had drained him mentally and physically all the same. A single slip could have meant death. Looking down at the alloy arm guard on his forearm, he shook his head, deciding it was too heavy and had been slowing his swings. Enlightenment tomorrow would fix that. His thoughts drifted back to the woman. Just then, footsteps approached through the mist, and he made a quick decision, lying down right where he was. A soft voice called out, and the female survivor stepped into view, hurrying toward him, pulling the cloth from her face to reveal delicate, pretty features as she called out with concern, claiming she had medicine and wanted to help, her hand already slipping into her pocket. Yi-Han remembered the flash of pain he'd caught in her eyes earlier when he'd wounded the giant python. As she reached his side and moved quicker, her arm rising, her palm drawing something free from her pocket. He struck first, swinging the machete straight at her. The blade connected cleanly, severing her right arm at the shoulder, blood spraying as she let out a shrill scream. Standing and stepping back, he saw what she'd been gripping, a gleaming triangular military dagger. Just as he'd suspected, her intentions had been murderous. He sneered down at her as she begged for her life, pleading that she'd been wrong, offering to serve him. Rolling on the ground, clutching her wound, he asked coldly whether she'd used a talent to control the giant python. She denied having one at all, though a flicker of shock crossed her eyes. Unmoved, he raised the machete again, and only then did she break, admitting the truth. Her talent was controlling mist beasts, and if he spared her, she'd team up with him, even be his slave. Her whole body trembled with fear, clearly not expecting him to be this ruthless. Yi-Han clicked his tongue, genuinely impressed. That was a formidable talent. This woman herself had no real combat ability, decent looks and figure aside, and yet she'd been controlling something as powerful as this python, effectively making the creature near unbeatable at this stage. Without his twice-enlightened machete, he'd have died here today. He briefly wished he could steal her talent for himself, then swung the blade straight across her neck. She couldn't be left alive. He had killed a person now, and a wave of nausea churned through him as he turned away. Killing beasts was nothing like this. A notification thankfully pulled his attention elsewhere, congratulating him on killing another survivor and rewarding him with a compound bow blueprint, a water purifier blueprint, and a cyan-gray giant python egg. 2 blueprints and an egg. Genuinely exciting hauls. A compound bow being a real ranged option, and a water purifier meaning he could finally purify wild water sources across the Mist Continent. At the same moment, a second notification arrived confirming he'd slain a 3-star mist beast, the cyan-gray giant python king, earning him a golden treasure chest as well. With a huge haul in hand, Yi Han got to work processing what he'd gathered, guessing the woman's shelter had to be nearby with more supplies waiting. True to his principle of wasting nothing, he stripped the clothing from her body, planning to wash and either sell it or keep it as a blanket, and set the triangular military dagger aside carefully. A good weapon worth enlightening further later. He began digging a grave for her, only to notice her corpse already changing. Gray patterns spreading across her pale skin, her severed skull's jaw opening to try to bite despite the decapitation, her eyes turning gray just like the zombie he'd already killed. Just like in the zombie shows he used to watch, the head had to be destroyed completely. He drove his blade down and finally silenced it, buried her, washed his machete in the stream, and turned to the Python King's corpse, a creature that massive would yield an enormous amount of material. Taking a deep breath, he set to processing it, listing much of it directly on the trading post as he worked, keeping only 100 or 200 caddies for himself and selling the rest. Hauling all of it back would have exhausted him completely otherwise. He soon extracted a gallbladder the size of a human head, setting it aside for detoxification pill production, and opened the golden treasure chest he'd just earned. Another surprise waiting inside, this time a precious card. The golden treasure chest yielded a genuine surprise this time. A material slot expansion card, congratulating Yi Han on the find. His material slot already worked something like the storage rings and bags out of fantasy novels. A piece of near-magical convenience, but its capacity had always been frustratingly small, holding only 10 kilograms. He paused his work on the snake meat to check the card's description. Using it would expand the slot's capacity to a full 100 kilograms. Thrilled, he clapped his hands, laughed, and used it on the spot. The slot's limit jumping instantly, letting him carry far more supplies going forward. Energized, he worked faster. Right around then, his third detoxification pill wore off. 3 hours had passed already. So he swallowed a fourth and drank some water before returning to the huge python carcass still half unprocessed in front of him, conservatively estimating it at 10 meters long. He kept cutting, piling meat into a growing mound, though the pile kept shrinking too. People were buying it as fast as he listed it, 1 kilogram at a time, at 200 mist coins per kilogram, an expensive price that people were paying anyway. He reflected wryly on how quickly the gap between rich and poor had opened up, barely half a day into all this. Some starving, while others drowned in plenty. His own balance had already crossed 3,000 mist coins, making him instantly wealthy by comparison. His sales caused an uproar on the World Chat channel too, with people baffled and furious at seeing a long string of 3-star mist beast meat listed at 200 mist coins per kilogram, some accusing him of hacking, others wondering if it was some exploitable bug letting him farm beast meat and coins endlessly. Yi Han shook his head with a smile as he worked, thinking how much this whole mist survival resembled a game in some ways. Except that dying here meant actually dying, no resurrection waiting on the other side. By the time the fourth pill had 20 minutes left, he'd finally finished processing the entire carcass, shaking out his sore arms, vision blurring slightly, stomach turning at the endless fishy stench. Drinking water and washing his face helped a little. A large amount of python meat still remained, more than he was in any shape to move. So he stuffed as much as would fit into his now expanded material slot and left the rest for later, planning to rest before continuing. His next goal was clear. The dead woman's shelter had to be nearby. He crossed what remained of the ruined village and found it. A full 2-star shelter, raising his eyebrows in surprise. She'd clearly been doing well for herself, likely using her talent to sweep the entire village for resources. Stepping inside, he found the same wood-stone layout as his own, with its wooden bed, and sat down heavily, letting out a long breath just as his fourth pill's effect finally ran out. The relocation trip had already eaten 4 hours, and while he hadn't found a proper new settling spot yet, the haul along the way had been massive. Scanning the room from the bed, he took stock of what she'd left behind. 9 L of water, 2 kilograms of sliced bread, 3 kilograms of compressed biscuits, 5 buckets of instant noodles, and, oddly, a single tube of lipstick, alongside some ordinary 1-star supplies like wood stacked messily in a corner. The lipstick made him burst out laughing, wondering where on earth she'd gotten it. He eyed the instant noodles longingly, craving them badly. But he'd left his pot behind this trip to save space in his material slot, so boiling water wasn't an option. He wished briefly for a self-heating hot pot that needed no boiling, but had none, and settled for the sliced bread instead, which which beat the black bread from his own welfare pack by a wide margin. Bread he still hadn't even touched. After eating a little, he lay down and felt soreness settle into every part of his body. Today's exertion had been enormous, more than even someone in peak condition could easily shrug off, and despite his usual fitness, even he felt it. Lying there, he browsed the world chat channel, less to pass time than to gather useful intel, sifting through the noise for anything worth knowing. One thread caught his eye. Someone had listed a pistol on the trading post priced at 1 million mist coins, drawing plenty of cursing from people who recognized it as nothing but a flex, since no one could realistically afford it. Yihan sucked in a sharp breath at the thought. Someone had already gotten hold of a firearm. That gave him a real jolt of unease. His own arsenal was still just a machete and a triangular military dagger, cold weapons both, and even with the machete twice enlightened to iron-cutting sharpness, it still felt lacking against a gun. Anything that precious, he figured, had to have come from at least a golden treasure chest, and he found himself eager to secure more of them, and higher-tier ones too. He spent close to an hour combing through more chat, gathering a decent amount of intel. The most powerful weapon known so far was that pistol. That woman's talent for controlling 3-star mist beasts likely had some time limit or restriction he hadn't yet confirmed. Some survivors could sense danger in advance, others could see through the mist at limited range. Genuinely strong talents both. And then there were the odder ones. Someone claiming they could boil water with their mind, which Yihan briefly envied given his noodle craving, and someone else whose talent, bafflingly, was being able to hold their urine for 3 days. He kept scanning, thinking it all over, until his eyelids finally gave out and he fell asleep. He woke suddenly, frozen. Night had fallen and the room had gone cold, wind howling outside, mixed with the distant cries of mist beasts, the ground trembling faintly beneath him. Yihan scrambled up off the bed, ignoring the soreness in his body, and hurried to check outside. It was pitch black out there. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. During the day, the mist normally allowed for about 2 meters of clear sight. But now, by his own rough estimate, he could barely see half a meter, and the cold had turned brutal too. He guessed the temperature had to be hovering right around 0 and quickly shut the door again, though it made little difference. The shelter itself was barely any warmer than outside. He hadn't meant to sleep clear through to nightfall. Deciding to start a fire and roast some meat, he knew the night was far more dangerous and he needed to eat quickly and stay alert. He built the fire in the middle of the room and began roasting python meat while checking the world chat channel. Full of people terrified of the darkness, freezing without any fire source despite having plenty of wood, someone reporting a strange bird attacking their cottage, and someone offering their entire fortune of tens of millions to whoever could help them get home. Avian mist beasts had apparently appeared, which worried Yihan. Creatures attacking from the sky would be far harder to deal with. He suspected plenty of people wouldn't survive the night. Near zero temperatures were no environment for anyone to endure, and it would only get colder before dawn, with people of weaker constitutions likely to fall sick. And sickness out here was practically a death sentence. The python meat turned out to taste surprisingly good, fresh and faintly sweet with a bit of salt and pepper, and he ate heartily, wrapping roasted meat in slices of bread and taking huge bites, oil dripping everywhere. The fire and food chased the cold away and left him comfortable, though he never let his guard fully down, adding wood to the flames afterward while keeping an ear on any movement outside as he continued checking the world chat channel and trading post for bargains. Though by this point, genuine deals had dried up entirely. Since anyone still selling precious supplies, cheap was either dead or already stripped bare, and any rare mispriced listing that slipped through got snatched up faster than he could react given the sheer size of the population. He did spot one useful find, though. A 2-star timber called ironwood, one of the materials listed on his compound bow blueprint, and bought it immediately, spending 50 mist coins for 1 kilogram. That covered only one ingredient of several still needed. Watching the clock in the corner of his panel, which ran on the same 24-hour cycle as his old world, Yihan noted the moment past midnight when his enlightenment count refreshed back to 2 uses. Though the mist shop itself hadn't refreshed yet, running on its own separate 24-hour cycle unrelated to the calendar day, he considered his options. Continuing to enlighten the machete would turn it into what the system called an indestructible machete, effectively a 4-star weapon. But he decided the current blade was more than sufficient for now, since his failure to kill the giant python in one strike had been down to its sheer bulk, not any dullness in the blade. The triangular dagger could become a 3-star version, also unnecessary for the moment. The bearskin backpack could turn into a rolling trolley case version, Useful on flat terrain, but pointless out here in the rugged wild, so he passed on that too. Then he remembered the cyan-gray giant python egg he'd taken from the woman. And sure enough, it too could be enlightened. Upgrading into a 5-color python egg, described as hatching into a 5-star mist beast, one so spiritual that it would bond to whoever it saw first upon birth. Yihan let out an excited yell and used enlightenment on it immediately without hesitation, and a flash of light later, he had the 5-color python egg in hand. Checking further, he found it could be enlightened again, this time into a 7-color python egg. He didn't hesitate for a second, spending both of his days' remaining enlightenment uses on it back to back. Staring at the egg afterward, he was filled with anticipation. Hatched. This would be a 7-star mist beast. If that woman's 3-star control talent had been terrifying, what would a 7-star creature even mean? 3-star beasts were already dangerous enough that few could handle them. 7 stars, he figured, would sweep away everything in its path. He doubted even gunfire could kill something at that level, imagining it would take cannon fire to bring one down. He wondered eagerly how much further the egg could still grow with more enlightenment tomorrow. Wishing time would fast forward. Caught up in the excitement, he stayed awake until past 4 in the morning before finally lying down to sleep. After a short rest, dawn broke, and the temperature climbed somewhat with it. Opening the door, Yihan found visibility had recovered to roughly 2 meters. He packed up his gear, cleared some space in his supplies inventory, and stepped out of the shelter, heading first to check on the pile of python meat he'd left behind, reasoning the cold night would have kept it from spoiling. He guessed over 100 kilograms should still be there. Passing back through the ruined village, though, he found devastation. Much of the pile had been eaten. Scanning the mist for immediate danger and finding none, he examined the scene closely and confirmed birds were responsible. Claw prints in the dirt, dark gray feathers scattered around, and pecking marks left in the remaining meat. Looking up, he could faintly hear an ugly bird cry somewhere above. Given the size of the feathers, whatever bird this was couldn't be small, and he decided against confronting it directly, quickly packing the surviving meat into his inventory and hurrying back to the woman's shelter. There, he sorted through it, cutting away and discarding the pecked portions and storing the rest, listing much of it on the trading post as well, since there was simply too much to consume before it spoiled. With that handled, he pressed on with his relocation plan, leaving the shelter and continuing to follow the stream. After using 2 more detoxification pills along the way, he finally spotted a lake. Following the stream all the way forward, Yihan finally reached a lake, though he couldn't tell its true size yet, the mist between heaven and earth blurring his view too much. He began circling it to get a sense of scale, reflecting on how wildly lakes could vary. Back in his original world, the largest stretched hundreds of thousands of square kilometers, while the smallest might be barely 15 square meters, smaller even than his current shelter. A lake this size, he figured, would mean abundant resources. Fish, plants, animals. Though danger would come with it too, since every kind of mist beast would inevitably come here to drink. He remembered nature documentaries, where plenty of wild animals met their end doing exactly that. He weighed whether to settle here. Then he spotted a large crocodile lying motionless in the mud by the shore. At least 2-star by his estimate, tensing up and gripping his machete instinctively. Though the creature seemed not to have noticed him at all, he decided to leave it be for now and kept moving, focused purely on scouting the area rather than picking a fight. Circling further around the lake, he ate 2 more detoxification pills along the way, bringing his total usage since setting out to 8. He'd started with 11, meaning only 3 remained. He recalled someone on the World Chat channel mentioning that prolonged exposure to the mist would cause a person's blood vessels to take on a faint gray glow, and that very few people right now had any way to detoxify, leaving most simply enduring it. Shaking his head at the thought, he paused to size up the lake more precisely. Roughly rectangular, about 300 meters long and 200 meters wide, working out to around 60,000 square meters. Only a small lake by any real measure. The crocodile remained the only danger he'd spotted so far, so he decided to explore further before settling on anything. Picking a new direction and moving briskly, his luck held. After just over 10 minutes of walking, a mountain came into view. Circling it a bit, he found he couldn't make out its boundaries or peak in any reasonable time, noting scattered burrows that could belong to anything unknown, along with plenty of plant life, mostly 1-star with some 2-star mixed in. It felt like a place worth exploring properly. Relocating wasn't something to rush into, but having already come this far, this was the best option he'd found. Both sites carried risk and opportunity in equal measure, so he settled on a plan. Find a spot somewhere between the lake and the mountain, not too close to either, positioned between the woman's shelter and the lake but leaning slightly toward the lake. He turned back to make it happen. On the way, passing the lake again, he heard the sound of water. Likely a fish breaking the surface, paired with the flap of wings, guessing it might be a bird catching fish. Though with visibility this poor, he could only guess. He pushed the thought aside and focused on relocating, eventually settling on a spot 15 minutes walk from the lake, calculating that a round trip would cost half an hour on the road, roughly half a detoxification pill each time. He joked to himself, self-deprecatingly, about being a pitiful corporate slave over the math, wincing slightly at the cost. But he didn't dare settle any closer, worried about a midnight visit from the crocodile or any of the beasts drawn to the water. Right there, he used the fixed-point relocation card. A flash of white light later, his shelter appeared around him. Bed, supplies, and even his iron pot all carried over intact. Nestled against the mountain and near the water, exactly as he'd hoped, he grinned, sat down with a thump, and let out a long breath. The move was finally settled. He got the pot boiling and pulled 2 buckets of instant noodles from his supplies, and soon the shelter filled with their aroma, genuinely thrilled at how happy something as simple as instant noodles could make him. Digging in with a mix of noodles, soup, and roasted python meat, he found it deeply satisfying. A stray, slightly dangerous thought crossed his mind. What would the colorful python egg taste like boiled? But it stayed purely hypothetical. Nothing could have made him actually eat it. He wanted to keep enlightening it, aiming eventually to turn it into a dragon egg, imagining himself riding a dragon while every other survivor still struggled. Unstoppable. After eating, he got to work refining more detoxification pills. With his current wealth, he could have bought every ingredient without a thought, but stuck to his habit of hunting cheaper listings anyway. While working, he browsed the world chat channel, catching a flood of chatter. Someone furious that a survivor was underselling Costas root, others complaining about mispriced 2-star stone starting a price war. Someone despairing over still not scraping together 30 missed coins for a talent awakening, a plea for a single cigarette, and someone openly announcing they wanted to start killing other survivors just for the fun of it. With so many people in the world, he thought, there really was every kind of person imaginable. Remembering death row inmates back home, people whose hearts had already gone dark long before any of this started. Even that woman, who'd looked so harmless, had tried to kill him. Anyone less prepared who'd met her would surely be dead. This time, he finished refining a full 20 detoxification pills, and it settled his nerves considerably. With that stock, he could explore and develop with real safety. He hadn't yet seen anyone else selling detoxification pills, though he couldn't rule out others having them too. It was the second day of mist survival now, with 5 days left before the mist storm arrived, and he decided upgrading his shelter another level would be the smart move for safety. With that in mind, and the mist shop having refreshed as well, he opened it eagerly to see what today's offerings were. 3 new items had appeared in the mist shop: a pack of boxed facial tissues, a box of chocolates, and a searchlight. The tissues alone moved Yihan deeply. After more than a day on the mist continent, going to the toilet without any paper had been a genuinely awkward problem, and used sparingly, this pack would last him a good while. The chocolate didn't warrant much thought. Ordinary chocolate, no special properties mentioned, useful mainly as a quick sugar boost and strength restorer, though mist beast meat did that job even better for him, so he filed it away as a simple snack. The real prize was the searchlight, priced at 100 mist coins in the shop, and after reading its description, he bought it without a second thought. A product of higher civilization technology, capable of letting a survivor see clearly through the mist within a 10-meter range, requiring no charging, with an essentially indestructible, extremely long service life. Genuinely thrilled, Yihan felt the low visibility had been one of the biggest obstacles to his exploring and developing so far, and this divine little lamp solved it outright, letting him see a full 10 meters clearly through the fog. Calling it a divine artifact wasn't an exaggeration at all. He turned it over in his hands, unable to put it down. Shaped roughly like a flashlight but shorter and more compact, surprisingly heavy, radiating a high-tech metallic feel. Seamless all over with no visible joints, as if formed in one piece. And its switch wasn't a push or press but an internal buckle activated by twisting the handle. Eager to test it, he stepped outside and pointed it into the mist. Sure enough, everything within 10 meters came through clearly. Deciding to make a trip to the dead woman's shelter to bring back everything left there, he readied his gear, swallowed a detoxification pill, and hurried over. Once there, he packed every item inside into his resource inventory and left without any hesitation or sentiment, only wondering with some annoyance why the shelter itself couldn't be recycled or dismantled somehow. Surely he wasn't meant to tear it down by hand. Guessing it probably required some kind of card item he didn't yet have. The round trip cost him exactly 1 detoxification pill. Back home, he lay down for a nap, reflecting that his sleep schedule had completely fallen apart since arriving. Sleeping through the previous afternoon, waking at night, struggling until 4 in the morning before crashing again. Clearly something he needed to fix properly. After roughly half an hour of rest, he woke up feeling remarkably energized. None of the sluggishness his broken schedule should have left behind. And guessed this had to be a benefit of all the mist beast meat he'd been eating. The mist bred terrifying toxins, sure, but also strange plants, minerals, and beasts whose meat clearly carried real benefits for the human body. He swallowed another pill and headed for the lake, using the searchlight along the way to see much further than before. Reaching the shore, he slowed down and stayed sharply alert, remembering the 2-star crocodile he'd already spotted. Well aware something even more dangerous could easily be hiding in the water. With the searchlight finally letting him see clearly, he spotted a patch of lotus flowers out in the center of the lake. And where there were lotus flowers, there would be lotus roots too, stirring a bit of greed in him, certain that anything the mist continent produced would be far from ordinary. Going into the water himself, though, was completely off the table. He had no intention of becoming crocodile food. Scanning the shoreline further with the light, he found plenty of plant life, but mostly low-value 1-star material. And as a T0 tier player, he figured it was smarter to simply buy such things than waste time gathering them himself. His real targets were powerful mist beasts, rare materials, and treasure chests. He mused that a lake this dangerous surely hid treasure chests somewhere at its bottom, the danger of a place tending to correlate with the value of what it guarded. Then he heard ducks quacking, and his eyes lit up. Ducks meant little threat, edible meat, and eggs besides, a solid find all around. Following the sound, he soon caught, under the searchlight's beam, a startling scene. A crocodile chasing a duck through the reeds along the shore, moving with surprising speed as he scrambled to keep the light trained on it. He couldn't tell if it was the same crocodile he'd spotted earlier. Similar in size, but impossible to be sure. Though it hardly mattered once the duck escaped by flight and the crocodile turned its attention to him instead. At least 2-star, he judged with a sneer. Killing it should drop a silver treasure chest, and it was practically walking to its own death. Any ordinary survivor would have fled the moment a crocodile appeared. But to Yi Han, this was nothing more than a treasure chest and supplies delivering themselves to his door. As it charged, he met it without a trace of fear, swinging his blade. Under the searchlight's glow, the edge flashed even more fiercely, and split the crocodile's head clean in two with a single stroke. The system confirmed the kill. A 2-star mist beast, the mist alligator, dropping a silver treasure chest. Exactly as expected, confirming his working theory. 1-star mist beasts dropped nothing, 2-star ones dropped silver chests, 3-star ones dropped gold. 1 and 2-star kills came easily to him now. 3-star fights were still genuinely difficult, best handled with tools like gasoline or venom sacs to end things quickly, or else risk a repeat of the brutal fight with the giant python. His left arm still ached from that fight. The alloy arm guard had only protected his forearm, leaving his upper arm swollen from flying debris, though thankfully the bone itself hadn't been damaged. Setting the crocodile's corpse aside for now, he opened the silver treasure chest, eager to see what it held, and a flash of silver light swept before his eyes. The silver treasure chest yielded an iron furnace blueprint, which would let him craft one using the blueprint's instructions. Yi Han checked it over with satisfaction. This was the kind of heating setup common in northern rural areas back home, an iron furnace that burned wood or coal, with a pipe running outside to vent smoke. The materials required were simple enough on paper, just 50 kilograms of pig iron. He didn't have any on hand, but figured he could buy it, and opened the trading post to start refreshing listings. Pig iron was a 2-star material, and he recalled seeing it available before when he hadn't needed it. But naturally, now that he actually wanted some, nothing turned up for a full 10 minutes, which left him half amused and half furious at the absence of any search function on the trading post. After a few more minutes of refreshing, pig iron finally appeared. Priced at 50 mist coins per kilogram, meaning the full 50 kilograms he needed would cost 2,500 mist coins, an enormous sum that hardly anyone at this stage could realistically afford. Even wealthy as he now was, holding over 5,000 mist coins from selling mist beast meat, the price still made him suck in a breath. Nearly half his fortune just to build one furnace. He decided against buying from that particular listing, judging it overpriced, and kept refreshing. But the cheapest he could find still came to 38 mist coins per kilogram. It left him nostalgic for the early days of the trading post, when bargains had been everywhere. Those days were gone, now that everyone had wised up and the fools willing to underprice things had dried out. Setting the furnace idea aside for the moment, he turned to processing the crocodile carcass instead. Aware that time was slipping by while he'd been standing at the lake, his detoxification pills effect steadily draining the whole time. He worked quickly, packing the crocodile skin and meat into his material inventory before moving on. Curious what crocodile meat would even taste like. Though right now, what he really wanted was fish. The lake was full of them, but he had no way to catch any yet, and no fishing rod or net had turned up in any of his searches. Half an hour later, though, he stumbled onto something else. A duck nest hidden among the reeds, holding a full 5 duck eggs. He couldn't help but drool at the thought of oily, salted duck eggs, amused at how something that used to cost next to nothing back home had become an object of genuine longing out here, purely because it was now hard to get. He packed all 5 eggs away and continued his circuit around the lake before heading back to his shelter, the whole trip costing him 2 more detoxification pills. His total haul: 1 crocodile, 1 silver treasure chest, and 5 duck eggs. No 3-star mist beasts found this time, and he found himself wanting a golden treasure chest. He mulled over what to do with the eggs. Eat them plain, salt cure them, or try hatching and raising ducks. But decided raising livestock wasn't worth the time investment at this early, pioneering stage of things. He turned back to selling more mist beast meat for mist coins, reasoning that 2- and 3-star meat was valuable now but would only get cheaper as more people caught up, so cashing in while he could made sense. While at it, he kept checking both the World Chat channel and his regional channel for anything useful. Chatter ranged from someone celebrating finally reaching a 2-star shelter and hoping it could withstand the mist storm, to someone jokingly wanting to absorb someone else's luck for a talent awakening, complaints about how difficult a 3-star shelter was to reach, someone listing a bottle of wine from a treasure chest for sale, and someone confused about having received a talent upgrade card, asking if anyone knew what it did. Yihan noted that talent upgrade cards clearly weren't unique to him. With a population this massive, plenty of other powerful, lucky survivors were bound to exist too. Nothing else useful stood out, so he turned his attention to what a 3-star shelter would actually require, checking the trading post again. The upgrade demanded 500 kilograms of 3-star metal material and a shelter upgrade card. He'd picked up some 3-star metal through earlier bargain hunting, but it added up to less than 50 kilograms. Nowhere near enough, and what little was being sold now carried astronomical prices, far beyond what even his mist coins could cover. He frowned, chewing on roasted crocodile meat, sizzling, oil dripping, seasoned with salt and pepper, genuinely tasty, while thinking through it. 3-star metal could theoretically be gathered or bought, given enough coin and patience. But a shelter upgrade card was something he'd never even seen mentioned by anyone. Clearly an extremely rare item, almost certainly requiring at least a golden treasure chest to obtain. He told himself not to get too anxious. He'd already developed faster than nearly anyone else, and decided to head out once more, try his luck, and wait out the clock until midnight for his next enlightenment. This time he headed for the mountain range beyond the lake, avoiding the water entirely and figuring the mountains might hold ore worth finding. But after 2 full hours of wandering, he came up with little of note, only some 2-star plant material. Better than nothing, but a fairly mediocre haul overall for the day's relocation effort. He consoled himself that it might count as banked luck for tonight's enlightenment. Finally, midnight arrived and his enlightenment charge refreshed. Unable to wait, he immediately used it on the colorful python egg. A flash of golden light swept before his eyes, and a new prompt appeared. Congratulations. His enlightenment talent had just triggered a critical hit. A critical hit. And per the description, once enlightenment had been upgraded once, it carried a chance of triggering a critical hit that granted special attributes. Yihan's eyes went wide as he read the prompt on the egg before him. A 9-color python egg, capable of hatching into a 9-color python. A 9-star mist beast, born with a water attribute and the innate ability to control water. He was thrilled beyond measure. A 9-star mist beast could sweep through anything. The strongest creature he'd faced so far had only been 3-star. And even that giant python fight had nearly broken him. He could barely imagine what something 9 stars strong would even be capable of. Rubbing his hands together, he pushed forward and used enlightenment on the 9-color python egg again immediately. Golden light flashed a second time, and another prompt appeared. Another critical hit, back to back. Yihan cheered and threw a punch into the air, thrilled at the streak, thinking that his otherwise mediocre haul from the day must have been quietly building toward this luck. The egg's description updated again. A water-fire flood dragon egg, capable of hatching into a water-fire flood dragon. A super mist beast, carrying both the water attribute from the first critical hit and a newly added fire attribute from the second. Mastery over both water and fire innately. The python had transformed into a flood dragon. Yihan stared at the egg as though it were priceless. Already T0 tier himself, a water-fire flood dragon at his side would be like adding wings to a tiger. His heart raced at the thought of continuing further. Could this thing eventually become a true divine dragon if he kept enlightening it? Just then, a sharp crack sounded, and Yihan's whole body jolted, his pupils constricting as he stared at the egg. A hairline fracture had appeared across its strange, water and fire-lustered shell. Panicking, he shouted at it not to hatch. Afraid that once it did, he'd lose the chance to enlighten it further, pleading with it to wait one more day so he could give it 2 more enlightenments and make it even stronger. But the cracks only spread faster, entirely indifferent to his protests, until the whole shell was covered in fractures and something inside began pushing to break free. With a pop, a small head emerged, followed by 2 tiny claws, then the rest of its body, until a super mist beast. The water-fire flood dragon stood fully hatched before him. Yihan gasped in amazement. It was about the length of his own arm, shaped somewhat like a python but with 4 claws, its scales far more exquisite, beneath which faint blue and red crystalline light shifted and flowed. The visible presence of its water and fire attributes, breathtakingly beautiful. A single horn crowned its head, giving off an impression of sharpness so intense that Yihan guessed it might outmatch even his own enlightened machete. It let out an adorable, milky cry, and meeting its gaze, he found its eyes pitch black, clear, and filled with an indescribable spirituality. Cleaner, he thought, than even a newborn human's. Reaching out, he touched its head and found it surprisingly soft. The little creature nuzzled his hand and licked his palm with its tiny pink tongue, unbearably cute. Convinced it already regarded him as family, he named it Linger on the spot. It seemed to understand and happily wrapped itself around his arm, affectionate and pleased, before letting out another hungry cry, its stomach rumbling audibly. Yihan wasn't sure at first what to feed a creature so newly born, but the question answered itself almost immediately. Linger shot off like a bolt of lightning toward the wolf meat stacked in the corner. Meat from the 3-star bloodthirsty giant wolf, and tore into it with rows of sharp teeth that seemed to grow straight out from inside its mouth, devouring an enormous chunk in an instant. Yihan was stunned. Eating meat right after birth, and meat larger than its own body at that. In the firelight, he could swear Linger's body had already grown noticeably bigger. Before he could fully process it, all his stockpiled wolf meat was gone, and Linger had already moved on to the python meat. Yihan sucked in a cold breath, his scalp prickling. That was all 3-star beast meat, worth serious money, and in the blink of an eye Linger had eaten through several thousand mist coins worth of it. He couldn't afford to keep this thing fed. Already anxious about his mist coin balance, he now had a new worry entirely. This powerful little super mist beast was, without question, a literal gold-swallowing creature on 4 legs. He never expected to experience anything like raising a child back in his old world, only to end up doing something close to it here on the Mist Continent instead. Fortunately, after finishing off a bit less than half the python meat, Linger returned to him, wrapped itself around his arm again, and fell asleep to digest. Full and content. Studying it closely, Yihan could sense an enormous reserve of energy packed into that small frame. He stroked its head with a smile, thinking that the Mist Continent could be a lonely place, and having a companion like this would make things far more bearable. Out here, where even a pretty, seemingly harmless woman could hide murderous intent, trusting anyone was almost impossible. But now he finally had a partner he could trust completely. He had a feeling this water-fire flood dragon would stay with him through everything ahead on this journey, offering him real strength along the way. And that feeling proved true the very next day. Waking and stepping out of the shelter, he found Linger had already darted ahead toward the lake. And moments later, massive waves began churning across its surface. The lake wasn't especially large, and probably wasn't too deep either. But Yihan still wouldn't dare go into the water himself. Ever since moving here the day before, the thought had nagged at him constantly. There were fish and lotus roots down there, and he suspected treasure chests might be hidden at the bottom too, an itch he couldn't scratch. He hadn't expected the problem to solve itself so quickly. He wouldn't dare enter the water, but Linger certainly would. Gripping the searchlight, he hurried to the shore and stared out, frustrated that he couldn't make anything out. The light only reached 10 meters, and by now Linger had to be somewhere near the lake's center. All he could hear was the constant splash of water, droplets occasionally hitting his face, and wiping one away, he caught a faint trace of blood in it. He called out for Linger, worried. However powerful a super mist beast it was still just a newborn cub, and it had clearly gone straight into a fight with something in the lake. Could it actually hold its own? His anxiety didn't last long. Ripples spread across the surface as Linger came swimming back toward shore fast, its jaws clamped around the neck of a massive crocodile, more than twice the size of the one Yihan had killed the day before. Easily 3-star. He let out a sharp breath, laughing at himself for having worried at all. A super mist beast with both water and fire control, even as a cub, could solo a 3-star mist beast with room to spare, and clearly hadn't even needed to try hard. Truly terrifying combat power. Dragging the crocodile's huge body onto the shore, Linger let out 2 proud cries as if claiming credit, and Yihan, grinning, patted its head in praise. Right as a new prompt appeared on his panel, congratulating him. His super mist beast Linger had killed the 3-star mist beast mist alligator, earning him a golden treasure chest. Yihan could barely contain his grin. With Linger around, he could farm golden chests practically at will, and there was no such thing as too many. He opened it immediately, and the system congratulated him on obtaining a random relocation card and a 2-star detoxification pill formula blueprint. 2 items, and he was satisfied overall. The relocation card carried real uncertainty, but having an emergency option was still valuable, and the pill formula was a solid find too. Turning to process the crocodile, he was startled to find it already half devoured. Linger had eaten straight through it, gnawing from the head down, even swallowing the skin, already reaching its waist. Yihan thought wryly of the old ad slogan about good teeth making for a good appetite. Linger's teeth genuinely seemed as sharp and hard as his own machete, exactly what he'd expect from a super mist beast. Linger glanced up at him, sensing his hesitation, and used its little paws to nudge the remaining half-carcass toward him, offering to share. Yihan told it to just finish the whole thing, and Linger happily dove back in, devouring the rest with visible delight while Yihan watched with the fond smile of a doting father. Like a storm sweeping through, the entire 3-star crocodile vanished into Linger's stomach. Once full, Yihan asked Linger to help him gather lotus roots and catch some fish instead. Noticing that after finishing the crocodile, Linger's body had grown noticeably again, the water and fire luster on its skin richer than before. Linger tilted its head in confusion, not recognizing the words. Yihan explained with gestures. Lotus roots as the things buried beneath the flowers, fish as things swimming in the water. And Linger caught on immediately, diving back in. Before long, Yihan had his lotus roots, Linger presenting them like offered treasures, its retractable teeth extending and retracting on command. Only 1-star material, but delicious all the same. And Yihan washed the mud off by the shore, already imagining the refreshing crunch to come. Sent back for fish, Linger misunderstood on its first attempt. Yihan's gesture had been imprecise, and brought back a water snake instead, trembling and curled up in fear, eyes shut tight, refusing to even look at its captor. Yihan laughed, telling it to lift its head since it was a snake, not an ostrich. A 1-star mist beast wasn't worth eating or bothering with anyway, since he only wanted 3-star meat when he wanted meat at all. He redirected Linger, clarifying with better gestures, and this time it succeeded, returning with a plump, lively crucian carp. Pleased, Yihan asked it to check once more for treasure chests at the lake's bottom, gesturing out the concept. Thinking of the bronze chest he'd found in the ruined village earlier, and the loot the dead woman had clearly accumulated from opening several herself. Surely a lake this size held something too, especially with a 3-star beast guarding it, since such creatures typically protected either valuable resources or chests. Linger dove back in on command, while Yi Han scaled and gutted the fish by the shore with his triangular dagger, already planning a pot of crucian carp and lotus root soup. He bought some cheap wood from the trading post, started a fire right by the lake, and got the soup going. Everything about the Mist Continent's ingredients seemed a cut above. Beast, meat, and fish needing no deodorizing at all, coming out naturally fresh and fragrant once cooked, which pleased him greatly. Before long, the pot boiled over into a milky white broth, bubbling and thick with a savory aroma that made his mouth water. And just then, Linger resurfaced from the lake, its tail wrapped around a gleaming golden treasure chest. Seeing the golden treasure chest, Yi Han couldn't help but grin. His hunch had been right. A chest really had been hidden at the bottom of the lake. He praised Linger and scooped it up into his arms, noticing not a single drop of water clung to its body, thanks entirely to its water control ability. Linger nuzzled him happily, clearly pleased to have helped. Opening the chest brought a flash of gold light and a new item. Bronze thorn seed, described as plantable, growing into bronze thorns that could guard a shelter, with flesh and blood noted as the ideal fertilizer. A genuinely useful defensive item. His fish soup had finished cooking by then, its aroma overflowing. Despite being made from nothing but one-star ingredients and light seasoning, it tasted remarkably good, savory enough to nearly make his tongue fall off, the fish tender, and the lotus root crisp and refreshing. He mused that if Mist Continent ingredients were ever brought back to his old world, they'd cause a sensation. Offering some to Linger, it tilted its head curiously at the pot before sucking the entire contents up from a distance in one motion, turning the soup into a column of water that vanished into its mouth, showing off even over soup. Linger's eyes lit up with delight, clearly loving it, and Yi Han laughed, telling it to drink more if it liked the taste, taking a scalding sip himself. Linger, sensing this was Yi Han's meal, restrained itself after a few sips and some fish meat, watching him eat the rest. Otherwise, given its appetite, the whole pot wouldn't have been enough to fill the gaps in its teeth. Yi Han noted it seemed to dislike lotus root, unlike himself, who loved the sweet crunch. Beyond the soup, he also ate some sliced bread and cooked a pack of instant noodles in the leftover broth, finally feeling full. He noticed his appetite had grown along with his overall vitality. Clearly the result of eating so much Mist Continent food, the 3-star beast meat quietly strengthening his physique. Once finished, he asked Linger if there were any more chests at the lake's bottom, but it shook its head. Apparently, that single golden chest, guarded by the 3-star crocodile, had been all there was. A bit disappointing, he thought, given the lake had only yielded 2 golden chests total, neither containing the talent upgrade card he wanted most. Twice daily enlightenment still felt far too limited to him. He wished he could use it 100 times a day. Though he understood items like talent upgrade cards and maps had to carry extremely low drop rates by design. Things to be found by chance, not pursued directly. Back at his shelter, he took out the bronze thorn seed. Thumb pad sized, surprisingly heavy, metallic and bronze-colored, radiating a faintly magical quality. He dug a small pit with his machete and planted it, then placed a piece of 3-star giant python meat beside it as fertilizer. Before he'd even finished covering the pit, the meat began vanishing at a shocking rate. Faster than even Linger could eat, gone in an instant, leaving Linger itself wide-eyed in surprise. At the same time, the seed erupted into rapid growth, bronze thorns spreading and multiplying around the shelter, forming a fence-like barrier. The material felt impossibly hard and sharp. Yi Han tried cutting it with his dagger and failed completely, only his machete managing to bite in, confirming the thorn's hardness sat at 3-star level. He tested it further, tossing another piece of python meat at the thorns, which seemed to come alive, wrapping around the meat and devouring it whole in moments, growing thicker and more luxuriant with the nutrients gained. Satisfied, he nodded repeatedly, thinking he could finally sleep more soundly at night. Truly a product worthy of a golden treasure chest. Any mist beast attacking his shelter would run straight into the thorn's vicious defense. And even a 3-star creature might well die right there before it got anywhere near him. And with Linger and himself backing up the thorns, even a 4-star attacker would be in serious danger. Deciding to head up the mountain with Linger in hopes of finding ore, Yi Han set out, though he still had no real sense of the mountain's true scale, given how thick the mist remained around it. Only a feeling that it wasn't small, and likely held plenty worth exploring. Linger responded eagerly, coiling itself heavily around his shoulder. At the mountain's base, he swept the area with his searchlight, mapped out a rough route, and began climbing with Linger in tow. Within a few steps, he came across the cave he'd noticed on an earlier trip, where he'd once suspected something rabbit-like might live but had no way to catch anything. With Linger now at his side, that problem seemed solved. He gestured for Linger to go catch whatever was inside, and it understood immediately, even nodding at him. A gesture it had clearly picked up from watching him. But instead of rushing toward the cave, Linger called out to him several times in a row, seemingly trying to communicate something, leaving him completely baffled. It twisted its body, pointing repeatedly toward the lake, and a thought finally clicked into place. Was Linger saying there were similar cave entrances underneath the lake water too? Linger nodded eagerly, and Yi-Han's heart skipped. A mysterious cave entrance really did exist at the bottom of the lake. He asked how big it was, gesturing for Linger to demonstrate, and it scurried in a circle on the ground, indicating something roughly the size of a thatched cottage, though it had no idea where it led or what might be hidden inside. His instincts told him there were more secrets waiting down there. Curious why Linger hadn't gone in itself, given that a super mist beast with a newborn's fearlessness shouldn't have hesitated, he asked directly. Linger responded with a string of milky cries, clearly trying to explain, but Yi-Han couldn't make sense of any of it. He wished briefly for a beast language talent of his own, though he reasoned such a thing was probably unique and couldn't just be handed out to anyone without breaking something. Something had clearly stopped Linger from going further, but unable to figure out what, he set the matter aside for now, deciding to keep exploring the mountain and sending Linger into the nearby cave to catch whatever lived inside instead. Linger obeyed at once, though visibly reluctant to squeeze into the tight cave entrance. If it kept growing, Yi-Han guessed, it would eventually outgrow the opening entirely, though he suspected such a powerful mist beast might be able to shrink and grow its size at will once it matured further. Linger hadn't shown that ability yet. Before long, it emerged with a plump rabbit clamped in its jaws, kicking and screaming helplessly. Exactly as Yi-Han had guessed, a rabbit hole. Without Linger's help, catching rabbits himself would have meant tediously locating and blocking multiple burrow entrances and smoking them out. With a quick twist, he snapped the rabbit's neck. A one-star mist beast, dropping nothing, good only for its meat. Curious whether anything else might be hidden in the burrow, remembering the one-star python guarding a bronze chest back in the ruined village, he asked Linger to check again for something like a treasure chest. It went back in, and returned this time with a piece of ore held out like an offering. Yi-Han examined it and gasped. A 3-star metal material. Its description read, Secret Star Silver. A 3-star metal, a high-grade mineral with wide applications. Genuinely thrilled, he asked whether there was more of it, and Linger nodded vigorously. Plenty. A real mine, and a 3-star one at that, sat somewhere in this mountain. Not only would it easily cover the metal needed for his next shelter upgrade, it could also earn him a fortune in mist coins through sales. He stared up at the mountain like it was a treasure trove. Then came the practical question. How to actually mine it. He couldn't reasonably send Linger to bite off chunks one piece at a time. Or could he? He looked at Linger, and the creature seemed genuinely unsettled by the gaze. He asked outright whether it could mine the ore in bulk, holding up the Secret Star Silver as reference. Linger tilted its head, staring back with an expression that seemed to ask whether he was even human. It was the kind of shameless ask that would make capitalists weep and anyone else kneel in disbelief. Undeterred, Yi-Han pressed further, suggesting Linger simply drill straight through the mountain with its horn to expose a massive haul of ore at once, praising it encouragingly the whole time. Linger stopped bothering to respond entirely. Its spirituality let it understand him perfectly well, and it was already learning his vocabulary. After hearing him say lake a few times, it now recognized the word on its own. In the end, though, Yi-Han abandoned the mining idea as unrealistic for now. Perhaps once fully grown, a single flick of Linger's tail could collapse the mountain and expose the ore naturally. But as a newborn, that was still far beyond it. He had no idea how to begin mining himself either, this being his first attempt at it in either world, and knew the ore was buried deep inside the mountain, invisible from outside, making things genuinely tricky. Mining also carried real danger. A collapse could easily bury him alive, and he'd seen plenty of news stories about mining accidents to keep that fear front of mind. He decided to keep exploring the mountain first, making sure he understood the terrain and cleared any dangers before committing to actual mining. Continuing on with Linger, halfway up the mountain he made another discovery. A fluorescent fruit tree, and this time bearing a full 10 ripe fruits. Genuinely excited, he let out a long breath, having finally found another one after losing his first to the spider. He recalled that some people were still selling fluorescent fruit on the trading post, matching the tree's own description as something distributed across the whole mist continent. Not truly rare after all. Just then, Linger, still coiled around his neck, straightened up and let out a warning cry, still adorably milky sounding, but unmistakably signaling danger ahead. Yi-Han wasn't alarmed in the slightest. If anything, he was pleased, curious what kind of mist beast might be guarding this tree. Whatever it was, with Linger here, it was as good as dead already. Soon, Yi-Han spotted the mist beast guarding the fruit tree. An entirely new creature to him, a bear, likely 3-star. He ordered Linger to attack, tactically stepping back a couple of paces as he gave the command. Linger shot forward instantly, its hunger for battle clearly baked into its very nature as a super mist beast. The giant bear roared and charged, the ground trembling under its weight. Yi-Han's only real concern was making sure Linger left him the bear paws intact, hoping it wouldn't eat those too. He wanted to taste bear paw for himself. He wasn't worried about Linger at all. By now, he understood its combat prowess could sweep through 3-star mist beasts without much trouble. Sure enough, the moment Linger engaged, it landed a solid hit almost instantly, its speed like lightning, closing the distance before the bear's swiping claws could even connect. In a blink, a fresh wound opened in the bear's stomach. Linger had punched straight through its abdomen. Yi-Han pumped his fist, thrilled, thinking that this had to be more devastating than any firearm. Other survivors were out there showing off pistols, but pistols, rifles, even machine guns were nothing next to Linger. The bear howled in agony, its intestines spilling from the wound. But Yi-Han knew such damage wouldn't be fatal. Bears back in his old world were famously resilient even after horrific injuries, and this was a 3-star mist beast on the mist continent besides. It wasn't going down that easily. Sure enough, still screaming, it stuffed its own intestines back in and resumed its attack on Linger. The mountain shook with each thunderous strike as the bear pursued, mud flying and huge craters forming with every stomp. Having landed its hit, Linger coiled itself protectively around the fluorescent fruit tree's trunk, watching the bear closely. Yi-Han shouted for it to dodge quickly and keep the tree from getting damaged. Not out of pure altruism, but genuine self-interest. Remembering how much a single tree bearing 10 fruits a month was worth, and terrified of losing it the way he'd lost the last one. The bear's footsteps thundered like drums as it charged, and Linger flashed away again like lightning. This time wreathed in flame, its fire controllability on full display. Even 10 meters away, Yi-Han could feel the scorching heat. A flicker of fear crossed the bear's eyes. Beasts instinctively feared fire, and even at 3-star, this one hadn't grown immune to it. It tried to dodge, but Linger closed the gap instantly, opening a second wound in its belly. And this time didn't retreat, its whole body burning as it burrowed inside the bear's stomach, gnawing at its organs from within. The bear collapsed, wailing helplessly, and soon breathed its last. The system confirmed it. Yi-Han's super mist beastlinger had killed the 3-star mist beast, Mist Brown Bear, earning a golden treasure chest. Yi-Han laughed out loud, hurrying to the corpse. Another golden chest was fantastic news. He told Linger to leave the bear paws for him to split evenly between them, and to leave the hide alone too, wanting it for a blanket. Worried Linger's teeth were sharp enough to chew through anything, having already swallowed crocodile skin whole before. Linger acknowledged with a cry and kept feasting on the bear's insides, while Yi-Han opened the golden chest, obtaining ceramic body armor and a partial map of the current region. A map again. He barely spared a glance for the armor, opening the map immediately. And this time, the revealed area covered the entire lake and part of the mountain range, far larger than before, dotted with resource points. Most of the lake's markers were 1- and 2-star. Not worth much attention, but the key detail was a 4-star resource point sitting at the bottom of the lake. Unmistakably, the cave Linger had discovered earlier, a 4-star resource point. The urge to explore it immediately was overwhelming, but he understood that wasn't possible yet. He'd already asked Linger whether it could use its water control to drain the entire lake. But at its current stage, still barely a day old, that was simply asking too much. Beyond the lake, the map also revealed part of the location of the secret Star Silver Mine, densely packed throughout much of the mountain's interior. Having a map felt like having his own set of heavenly eyes. A shame maps themselves couldn't be enlightened, or he'd have used enlightenment on one repeatedly until the entire mist continent lay open before him. A cheat far too powerful to allow. He reasoned that global mist survival clearly let some survivors race ahead, but with limits built in too. Certain things simply weren't allowed to be enlightened, or someone would become effectively unstoppable. If enlightenment could even be used on himself, he thought, he'd probably end up something close to a god by the end of it. He checked the ceramic body armor and put it on. Some weight to it, but nothing that hindered his movement, and a genuinely useful upgrade since ordinary mist beasts wouldn't be able to bite through it, further boosting his survivability. A hugely productive day overall. The 3-star Secret Star Silver Mine and the 4-star point at the bottom of the lake stood out as the two biggest finds. More than justifying the long trek to relocate here, this really was a genuine treasure land. By then, Linger had finished eating. The massive bear carcass hollowed out almost entirely, leaving less than 100 kilograms of usable meat beyond the paws and hide that Yihan had saved. He didn't mind the loss at all, since it was clearly helping Linger grow. Its body sturdier now, the shimmer across its skin even more dazzling than before. Checking the time, he noted the mist shop had refreshed, hoping it might turn up something good. And as he opened it, his eyes lit up. 3 new items had appeared in the refreshed mist shop: a pair of socks, 10 arrows, and a pickaxe. The socks, priced at 10 mist coins, promised extra warmth and reduced odor. Yihan bought and put them on immediately, finding them a clear improvement over the pair he'd started with, which by now, 3 days into the Mist Continent, had developed holes and smelled unbearable. He pulled off the old pair and held them up for Linger to smell, and a distinctly human flash of disgust crossed the creature's eyes before it spat out a stream of flame, incinerating the socks on the spot. Yihan yelped, hastily throwing the burning remains to the ground and stomping them out, torn between laughing and despair at Linger's antics. He moved on to the arrows next. 10 pieces forged from refined steel, sharp-tipped and satisfyingly heavy in hand. He had no bow to fire them from yet, but reasoned that even with Linger as his primary fighter, more weapons and equipment were never a bad thing. Setting the arrows aside, he turned to the final item, a pickaxe, exactly what he wanted most right now, having just discovered the Secret Star Silver Mine. Remarkably good timing that the shop happened to refresh one immediately after. Better still, it was a 2-star pickaxe, described as suitable for mining 2-star ore, usable as a weapon, and doubling as a hammer. He bought it and swung it experimentally, miming a mining motion, one end sharp for digging or fighting, the other blunt like a hammerhead. He reflected that anyone else buying this same pickaxe wouldn't be able to touch the 3-star mine at all. But he only needed a single enlightenment to fix that. Mining 3-star metal would need at least a 3-star pickaxe, or the tool would likely break trying. Turning to the bear carcass, he processed the remaining meat Linger had left, hanging some for sale and keeping the rest to eat himself. The paws especially, all 4 of which he set aside entirely for his own consumption rather than selling. Handling the hide proved trickier. Proper tanning was clearly a specialized skill he had no idea how to do, so he simply stored it away for now, planning to ask around on the world or regional channel eventually, or find someone who knew the process. Interactions between survivors were still sparse at this stage, but he suspected that would change over time, with social hierarchies inevitably forming eventually. He then climbed the fluorescent fruit tree to harvest all 10 fruits, satisfied that a steady monthly income like this was genuinely valuable, even if the coin value of a handful of fruit meant little to him personally now. He spent the rest of the morning walking Linger around the mountain, checking off the resource points marked on his map one by one. The Secret Star Silver Mine remained the most valuable find, followed by the fluorescent fruits he'd just fully harvested, with everything else registering as 1 or 2-star, useful but unremarkable. Since the map's coverage wasn't complete, some further exploration would still be needed, and along the way, he gathered a decent haul of 1-star plants worth keeping. At noon, he returned to the lakeside and unloaded his bear hide backpack, which held a batch of finger-sized, vividly red fruits. A local variety of chili he'd started calling mist fire pepper, intending to use them for lunch. Today's meal was bear paw, and he set about preparing it, recalling that back home, proper bear paw cuisine involved elaborate, multi-step preparation. But he already understood Mist Continent ingredients didn't require any of that. The finest ingredients, as the saying went, often needed only the simplest cooking. He bought a bit of wood from the trading post and had Linger breathe fire to start the flame. The Linger brand lighter, permanently reliable, fast igniting, and running impressively hot. Linger seemed a bit put out at being reduced to a mere lighter given its actual power, But the moment the bear paws began roasting and their aroma filled the air, its irritation vanished entirely, eyes locked hungrily on the meat. Yihan seasoned the paws with salt, pepper, and the mist fire peppers, and the first taste of spice moved him deeply. He'd always loved spicy food, and this was the first time he'd tasted it since arriving 3 days earlier. Linger took a bite too, made an approving sound, then dove in for more, clearly sharing Yihan's taste for spice. Like father, like daughter, he thought. Of the 4 paws, he ate 2, and Linger ate 2, leaving him thoroughly stuffed while Linger, predictably, was still hungry, darting back into the lake afterward for its own buffet. Staring out at the water, Yihan wondered again what exactly that 4-star resource point at the lake's bottom could be. He hadn't obtained a single 4-star item yet, either through discovery or the trading post, and it was clear such resources were going to be brutally difficult to acquire at this stage, both to find and to actually claim once found. He was facing exactly that problem now. He mused that tomorrow he could start mining in earnest to prepare for a level 3 shelter upgrade. The ore itself wasn't a problem anymore, but the mysterious shelter upgrade card remained an open question entirely. Just then, Linger burst from the surface of the lake with a crocodile's tail clamped in its jaws, the creature thrashing and screaming as it struggled to break free. The system confirmed. Yihan's Super Mist Beastlinger had killed the 2-star Mist Beast Mist Alligator, earning a silver treasure chest. Linger dropped the corpse at his feet and nudged his leg insistently, pointing its tail toward the campfire, clearly wanting the crocodile meat roasted too. Yihan stroked its head fondly and agreed to cook it, setting to work on the carcass while opening the silver chest he'd just earned. The system confirmed another find. Opening the silver treasure chest yielded diving goggles and a can of cola. A flash of silver light later, both items were in hand. The goggles being the real prize, the cola a pleasant bonus, though Yihan was thrilled all the same. Happy water, out here on the Mist Continent. Who could understand what that meant? He cracked the tab open, tilted his head back for a long gulp, sighed contentedly, and let out a satisfied burp right in Linger's face. Linger, curious, wondered what this strange thing even was, and Yihan offered it a taste, shaking the can toward it. Linger nodded and sucked from the can's opening, the fizzy cola turning into a stream of water pulled straight into its mouth and let out excited cries. Clearly delighted, even if Yihan couldn't understand the words themselves. He laughed, complaining that his instruction to take a sip had somehow become more than half the can, though he appreciated Linger's restraint in leaving him the last bit at the bottom. Too tired to actually scold it for being such a glutton. Finishing off the remaining sip himself, he turned to examine the diving goggles, thinking his luck seemed to be delivering exactly what he needed lately. With these, could he actually try diving? He put them on, covering his eyes to make underwater visibility manageable. But the real obstacle remained breathing underwater, since he wasn't amphibious like Linger. He briefly considered using a hollow reed stalk as a makeshift snorkel, eyeing the reed cluster by the shore, though he suspected the stalks wouldn't be long enough given how deep the lake likely ran. He turned back to Linger, asking again what exactly was going on with that 4-star resource point, and why it hadn't been able to retrieve anything from it. Linger responded with a string of milky cries and a shake of its head, wagging its tail. But Yihan remained none the wiser. He gave up with a smile, unwilling to press the issue further, and turned to roasting crocodile meat for it instead. He ate 3 meals a day himself, but felt Linger's appetite ran closer to 10 meals, or maybe 10 tons would be the more honest estimate. While cooking, he checked the World Chat channel and Regional channel, his main sources of information about other survivors, though most of it was useless noise. Desperate pleas for food dressed up in crude offers, someone bragging about capturing a female survivor, requests to buy a shelter upgrade card outright with mist coins, someone loudly proclaiming an invincible talent, and the now familiar recurring plea from someone named Jiangfu, hoping his mother might somehow see his message. Yihan cursed inwardly at the mess. No shortage of predators, scammers, people clearly losing their grip, and that endlessly devoted son Jiangfu, but nothing genuinely useful in any of it. Switching to the regional channel proved more productive. He confirmed he was still in his original region, Withered Mountain Z1. Evidently a large enough area that it couldn't be crossed in a day or two. There, he noticed someone recruiting teammates for a mountain expedition, and wondered briefly if it might be the very mountain he was currently exploring, though he had no way to be sure given how many mountains might exist across the wider Withered Mountains region. Someone had asked the recruiter about their current progress, and the recruiter, going by the name Lu Zhao, answered quickly. A level 2 shelter, a weapon in hand, some food and water, and modest savings, putting him roughly at a middle-of-the-road standing. Yi Han figured that, assuming honesty, this checked out as reasonably average. Another survivor, Qu Zhihao, jumped in enthusiastically, begging to be carried along, offering to do anything in exchange for a bit of food, since he was running low. Liu Zhao agreed warmly, invoking a sense of shared national loyalty, and when Qu Zhihao asked how he'd even be found, Liu Zhao revealed he'd obtained a team card from a golden treasure chest, letting him send an invitation using the other survivor id to form a party. Qu Zhihao gushed with admiration at the mention of a golden chest, having only ever managed a bronze one himself. The exchange struck Yi Han as suspicious, the two of them feeling like they were putting on a scripted act. Though the mention of an actual team card gave him pause, wondering if Liu Zhao had simply invented it, or if such an item genuinely existed. It didn't feel entirely implausible. The conversation continued, with Liu Zhao confirming the invitation had been sent, and Qu Zhihao dramatically asking the channel to bear witness in case he vanished and turned up murdered, to which Liu Zhao reassured him that people of the same nation wouldn't cheat one another. Yi Han's suspicion only deepened. He added chili peppers to the roasting crocodile meat and let Linger dig in, its lower half coiling right over the flames without any apparent concern for the heat. Around then, Qu Zhihao posted again, gushing about how magical it had been to instantly appear beside Liu Zhao after teaming up, praising his new big brother's looks and generosity in sharing 2-star mist beast meat with him. That drew a flood of others in the regional channel eager to join Liu Zhao's group too, offering everything from flattery to services in exchange for a share of food or a coveted team card, along with speculation that the current inability to freely form teams might change after the mist storm passed in some kind of version update. Yi Han shook his head, now roughly 80% convinced the pair were running a con, though he understood why so many desperate, subsistence-level survivors would want to believe it regardless of their doubts. Deciding it wasn't his problem to worry about, he turned his attention back to his own priority, finding a way into the lake, and began browsing the trading post for anything like an oxygen tank that might help.